be made, but again, we hope we can get this race in for you today. Now, as far as what has happened so far this weekend, Terry Labonte has won the pole for this event, although Tim Richmond historically has the best record on road courses.
Well, Bob, the Winston Cup stock cars on road courses in recent years, they've been very predictable. We've had some surprise winners like Bobby Hillin Jr. in super speedways, but you can usually rely on Richmond, Labonte, and Ricky Rudd to run up near the front on the road course, and they have. The meteorologists for this weekend, I suggest that they rival the NASCAR Winston Cuppers because they predicted we would get rain, and by golly, we got it. This is a beautiful place to be, but I also suggest that we're probably geographically undesirable, at least right now.
Second fastest qualifier for the race, Rusty Wallace, and standing by to our right over in the garage area is Dr. Jerry Punch with Rusty.
Well, while some of the crews are building arcs here in the garage area, we're in the dry. And Rusty, you know, you came here twice to practice, to do some testing here. Did everything you learned those 2 testing sessions, is it being washed away by this rain shower today?
No, not hardly, Jerry. We've done a lot of testing up here, and it's rained quite a few times since we've tested. We brought the car back up here, and it basically performed just like we tested. We weren't on the pole. You know, I thought I had a shot at it, and Terry just barely nipped me for it. But, no, the teams are all poised. They're ready. We're just waiting this rain out right now. We're excited. You know, everybody's been calm. We've probably got a better chance of win up here at the Glen we've ever had. The cars run extremely well. And the Kodiak Pontiac is just running great, too. The team, Raymond Beal, our car owner, everybody's here for this hopefully win today.
Well, everyone said you thought you may have gotten cheated last year. You could have and possibly should have won here. You had possibly the fastest car all day.
Well, we did have a fast car, but we had an oil leak in the transmission. It was the first road race up here. We really didn't test enough laps to really give the transmission a good workout and get the temperature up in it to see what was going to happen. But we've learned a lot since then, and all the oiling problems are behind us right now. The 2 test sessions have taught us an awful lot. The only 2 cars that have tested up here were Terry Labonte and myself, and we're both on the front row. We did a little practicing yesterday, and both our cars are running extremely well. And so far, knock on wood, everything's great. You know, I just wish the rain would get out of our hair so we can go ahead and get this thing done because I'm really tense. I'm excited. I want to win this race.
Well, gentlemen, the scuttlebutt in the garage area this morning is this guy is the favorite. Beware the bear, they say. The Kodiak Pontiac and Rusty Wallace are on the prowl. Gentlemen?
All right, thank you, Jerry. While we're waiting for the rain to stop and the track to die, we're going to have some alternate programming. Up first will be a special edition of Speed Week, recapping the first half of the 1987 Winston Cup season. The Budweiser at the Glen Winston Cup race is being brought to you o'clock this morning, and it essentially has been raining since that time. Perhaps not quite as hard at this time than earlier, but still nevertheless enough to delay the start of our race. Well, let's go to Dick Berggren, who can give us more on this weather situation. Dick?
Well, Bob, they had predicted scattered showers for this afternoon, and so far they seem to be scattered quite evenly throughout Watkins Glen. We do see periodic breaks in the clouds, however, and maybe this is going to clear off. And one of the things I like about NASCAR is they will try very hard to get this race in. They'll do everything possible to hustle the cars, the crews, the teams, and even themselves if there's any shot. So stick with us. This race may happen this afternoon after all. Well, in football and basketball, you have a home team, but rarely in racing do you get to race at home. This driver standing with me, Jeff Bodine, is home, Chemung County in Chemung, New York. And Jeffrey, you've got a leg up on some of these guys. You've already been to victory lane this weekend. Yesterday, congratulations on that super win in the IROC race.
That's right. I know how to get there. Thank you. That was a great race, a great win. You know, I don't know what it means to win in that series yet. It hasn't sunk in yet, but I'm sure when I go home and sit down and think about it, I'm going to realize just how much that win means to me. I know racing in the series has meant a lot. It was really an honor to be invited to the series early in the year, and just never believed we'd end up here at Watkins Glen the champions.
Well, your wife, Kathy, is already planning to spend the $191,000 you won yesterday. In fact, being at home, she said some of the friends have already come by and asked for a loan. But how about winning here? You said you grew up here, and your dad, Eli, brought you and watched the Emerson Fittipaldis and the Ronnie Petersons and the Carlos Reutemans run. Did you ever dream you'd come here and run on this historic facility?
You know, I used to sit on the back straightaway on the outside up in a tree. The tree's still there. I've noticed that on the way around the track. It's still there, and I can remember coming up here, getting in line in the traffic and watching everyone race. I watched the Grand National race here a long time ago, and I always hoped I'd get here to race. You know, I've raced a modified here a few years back, quite a few years back. Raced a snowmobile around this track at Watkins Glen a few years back, and that's how crazy I was when I was younger. But I never really thought we'd get the chance to run a Winston Cup car back here. And, of course, last year all that came true. We came back for the first time in a long while and ran well last year, but we didn't win. Very disappointing in front of all these people, and a lot of relatives come up here, and so we were disappointed. We're hoping today, or if this weather continues the way it is, maybe tomorrow we can get out there and get back into victory lane and make everybody around here in Chemung County happy.
Well, maybe it'll happen today. The Budweiser at the Glen may go to green, and you'll be wheeling that Levi Garrett Chevrolet from third starting spot. Best of luck to you as we go back to Bob Jenkins.
All right, thank you, Jerry and Dick, for your reports. Well, we will continue to update you throughout the afternoon on the situation here, but right now it is still raining. In the meantime, we take you back 1 year for the 1986 version of the Budweiser at the Glen here at Watkins Glen, New York.
But is Les Richter, NASCAR's Vice President for Competition and Development. And Les, what's the NASCAR game plan?
Well, Jerry, NASCAR's program for rain conditions over the years has been to try to get the race in if it is all possible. And by that, NASCAR works real hard to try to stay as long as you can to get the full race in. And if the weather were to break here in the next hour or so and we had an opportunity to dry the track, we could start as late as 5 o'clock this evening and get the full race in the daylight time permitting. And that's been NASCAR's track record over the years. The fans know that we are going to be staying to the latest possible time. And we're hopeful that maybe we do get a break here and we can get the track dried and get the race in.
Well, we're hoping the race will be complete. As you said, NASCAR, the fans pay to see a full event, all 90 laps and 2.5 hours of the show. And if they started at 5 o'clock, they could finish it still under daylight and get the complete event in.
Based upon our record here last year and how the race went, and considering that you're going to have some caution flags, taking all that into consideration, we feel very comfortable that if we could get a green flag at 5 p.m. that we could get the race in.
Well, thank you, Les, for coming on with us. NASCAR has lined up a number of vehicles, safety crews, and a jet dryer to dry the track here if the rains would stop. They're hoping to get the event in. If not, the word is it will probably go tomorrow. But we're going to be here all afternoon trying to get this race in. As Les Richter came on with us and told us, they're going to stay to the last minute to try to give the fans the Budweiser at the Glen live on ESPN. Bob?
All right, thank you, Jerry. And you can see that the rain is continuing to come down. The covers are on the cars that are assembled on pit road. But hopefully the rain will stop and the sun will come out and we'll try to get it in for you. Meanwhile, we have the finals of the Volvo International Tennis Tournament from Stratton Mountain, Vermont on a little bit later here this afternoon on ESPN. And in the finals, Yvonne Lindell and John McEnroe. So there is a possibility that if the race is delayed later this afternoon, we won't be able to bring it to you live, but we will stay here to update you throughout the afternoon and report on the weather situation. But for right now, we go back to the 1986 Budweiser at the Glen here. Rain here in the area since about 9 o'clock this morning. Now, in the last hour, it stopped raining a couple of times and gave us some hope. But at the moment, it is raining, and it is raining quite hard. Despite that fact, the tow trucks and the pace cars are out on the track in a futile attempt to dry it. We're still hopeful, however, we can get this race in later this afternoon. To the pit area we go, actually to the garage area where it's nice and dry. Here's Jerry Punch with Davey Allison.
Well, it's somewhat dry here, Bob, and you know, it's been a bad week for the Haviland Star team, for Davey Allison. And Davey, before the car even got here and the crew got to this track, a near disaster nearby here in Watkins Glen.
You know, we were really fortunate, Jerry. The truck turned over with the cars in it, and nobody was seriously injured. Larry, if the truck driver's at home right now trying to recuperate with some torn ligament, but that was the worst injury, and Devin Barbie had a puncture wound and had to have some stitches, but we're really lucky that nobody was any more seriously hurt than that.
Well, to fill you in, the brakes failed on their truck, and they had 2 cars in the truck, and Larry, if the truck driver, some quick thinking averted what could have been a disaster. A lot of parked cars at the bottom of the mountain. He rode the truck down the side of a mountain, head on into a concrete abutment. The truck flipped upside down, and the cars inside were beaten up quite a bit. And the car you're running here, it's nicknamed Battle Star. It's the car you won with on ESPN at Dover, and the car that we saw burning with 30-foot flames at Darlington earlier this year. You try to make it exciting for us, don't you?
Well, you know, we don't really intend for it to be exciting in the certain ways that it has been, other than trying to win races like we did at Dover. But old battle stars burned at Darlington, and you know, it's had a rough life. It's been beat up at Pocono, got beat up a couple other times this year, and we're just trying to go out and keep working hard and try not to lose any momentum that we had built up. But it's been rough on us this trip.
Well, Davey Allison, leading Rookie of the Year contender, his first ever road course start today, if it comes off, and we hope it will. But we'll remind you that as we watched last year's Budweiser at the Glen, we'll be back a little bit later. We might have a little roundtable discussion with some of the veteran drivers, people like Neil Bonnet, Darrell Waltrip, and Benny Parsons. So we'll be having that a little later on as you watch the Budweiser at the Glen. Bob?
All right, Jerry, thank you very much. And again, a reminder that later this afternoon here on ESPN, we'll have the finals of the Volvo International Tennis Tournament featuring Yvonne Lindell and John McEnroe. For right now, however, let's go back to the 1986 Winston Cup race here at Watkins Glen, New York. At the moment, there is no 87 version. It's been raining all day, and it stops only long enough to give us encouragement, and then it starts raining again, and at the moment, it is coming down pretty good. So the start of this year's Budweiser at the Glen delayed because of bad weather. This is only one of many auto racing events coming up for you on ESPN during the month. This coming Thursday night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, we'll have the Jolly Rancher Midgets from Hinsdale, Illinois at Santa Fe Speedway. Then a week from today at 8:20 Eastern Time, the Formula One race from Austria. Then later that same afternoon at noon, the NASCAR Champion 400 from Michigan International Speedway. Following that will be another USAC Midget program, that's time from the Speedrome. That'll be on August the 20th. We follow that with the NASCAR Busch 500 qualifying on Friday night, and also the Grand National race, and then the Winston Cup event on Saturday the 22nd. All of those will be live here on ESPN. And finally, another Jolly Rancher USAC Midget race from the Speedrome on August 27th, and then the IndyCar race from Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin on Sunday, August the 30th. All of those events live here on ESPN during this month. Well, let's go to Dick Berggren in the pit area.
Well, Bob, we had a little optimism just before we came on the air here. It had almost entirely stopped raining, but down in the garage right now, it is absolutely pouring. I'm here with Kenny Schrader. Kenny, there are some kinds of race cars that do race in the rain, but Winston Cup stock cars don't. Why don't you guys come up with rain tires and run in the rain?
Well, it's just, you know, in NASCAR's, ever since they've started up, they've run primarily oval tracks, and it's just something that traditionally you don't do on ovals. I think you could maybe see down the road in our future if we get maybe a half a dozen or so road courses on our schedule, and the way that scheduling of the events becomes so important that it could be something that would be feasible. We could get geared up with some Goodyear rain tires, and that would be something we might be looking at in a couple years.
How dry does it have to be today, given present circumstances, the tires and cars that you're running right here today? How dry does it have to be for this race to transpire?
Well, it has to be 95% dry, really. You know, we can start the race under a yellow condition if the track is, you know, 75% or 60% dry, and all the cars out there with their tires, we can dry the racetrack up in a condition where we can race on it in about 10 laps or so. But to actually end up to racing speed, it has to be fairly dry, because our tires, being designed not for the rain, don't have any tread on them at all, and there's not much room for water in between you and the surface.
And right now there's plenty of water where I am, at least. Jerry Punch, what's it like where you are? Well, it's plenty wet and plenty windy as I stand here and try to do my Mary Poppins imitation, holding onto the umbrella as the gusts of wind come by. We're on the front straightaway beneath the flag stand, where hopefully later this afternoon, Harold Kinder will climb and drop the green flag on the Budweiser at the Glen. The crowd cheered a few minutes ago when it stopped raining. That's the good news. Well, the bad news, it started again. Mother Nature unzipped the clouds, and we're getting some more moisture here at Watkins Glen. So we'll still wait here for the Budweiser at the Glen. Not here at the start-finish line. We're going to scamper into the dry. But, Bob, we're still waiting here, hopefully going to green as soon as possible.
All right, thank you very much, Jerry. Well, the Budweiser at the Glen Winston Cup race from Watkins Glen, New York, being brought to you by Budweiser. Beechwood Age.
To come down, and we have some guests here on pit road. 3 of the veteran Winston Cup campaigners sitting here trying to keep dry and keep out of the moisture, and Neil Bonnet, Benny Parsons, and Darrell Waltrip. And we know a lot of you fans tune in every week and enjoy the racing, enjoy the lap-by-lap competition, but you really enjoy the victory lane. And we thought even though it's raining, we may give you a little indication of what Victory Lane may happen here later today or tomorrow. And for that little Victory Lane ceremony, let's go to our Victory Lane reporter here at Watkins Glen, Benny Parsons.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry. I tell you, you got 3 good ones to do the Victory Lane thing because all 3 of us need to see a Victory Lane. But right now, we'll say that today, Neil Bonnet, you won the race. How did you do it?
Well, I was the only guy with rain tires and windshield wipers, and it really came in handy today.
Who was your toughest competition out there today?
Well, I was the only guy crazy enough to go out. I carried my boat with me today.
What's all this going on?
Well, you know, it's been so long since I've been to Victory Lane. And as a matter of fact, it's been quite a while since you've been there. You want to try these a while? Here, Darryl, you can have them also.
From Victory Lane, now we go to Jerry Punch, back in the garage area with Darryl Waltrip.
Well, Darryl, it was a rough afternoon for you here in the truck. You drank 4 or 5 big cups of coffee, and you made that gallant run over to the garage. How do you feel?
Well, I feel like I did last week. Like I ain't never going to win another race. These guys, they really know how to... I almost started crying when I watched them do Victory Lane, and here I am. I ain't in it again. Matter of fact, I ain't been in anything this year.
How would you... Neil was concerned that his wife, Susan, might turn on the television at home and say he won and start spending money. But, Susan, it's not over yet. We're just playing here. But, you know, the rain today, how does it affect the concentration? You know, these guys are sitting here ready to race, and suddenly you're going to have to wait and wait and wait some more.
Well, it's been a very, very boring day. This is the most rain I've seen in about 6 months, though. Been pretty dry in Tennessee, so I know that... by the way, honey, I run second. It's not a typical day, you know.
And I tell you, this is probably the most humorous moment we've had all day because we all want to be on the racetrack. Not only us, but the people in the attendance here, the pit crews. They all want to get the job done, go back to North Carolina, wherever they come from, and go on to Michigan next week. But right now, we're definitely on hold.
Yeah, well, that's the tough part. The crews, they're all down there. We got to run this race tomorrow, it appears. It could be late tomorrow. The truck won't get home till Tuesday, and the boys have got to load up and be in Michigan Friday morning early, so they'll have to go up Thursday. So it's really messing up everybody's plans. And Stevie, you're going to have to go to the doctor by yourself tomorrow, honey. I'm not going to be able to be there to hold your hand. And don't have the baby like you threatened.
I think we can blame this on Stevie. She's, you know, she come into the races. We didn't have any rain, and she's not been coming for a few weeks. And if the folks aren't tuned in to what we're saying, Stevie Waltrip, Darryl's wife, is expecting the little Waltrip to come along sometime, what, mid-September?
Yeah, in about 4 to 6 more weeks. And we went and had an ultrasound, and they told us it's a little girl, and that makes me real happy.
Well, she can use some Tide then in the kitchen.
Yeah, she can and she will. She's already got the scent of it, I'm sure.
Oh, we're having a good time on pit road. And, yeah, Neil, rumor this week was you were going to try a little different kind of racing. You've got the only 125-mile-per-hour bass boat in Birmingham and, of course, the stock cars, but possible drag car coming your way.
Well, the way I've been running in the stock cars and off the pace a little bit, that looks like I need to go drag racing. We've been working along with our team and really picking up some, but I've been messing around with some boys in Birmingham that have a little drag car, a little pro stock car, and I'm looking at getting one myself. Maybe I can race for 4 or 5 seconds and run real fast. I'm looking forward to doing it.
You know, it's normally that 4.5 hours, 5 hours that get us. We might try this 5-second deal or 6 seconds.
I don't know. Those guys are called squirt racers, and I don't want to be no squirt racer.
Yeah, but we got Beetle and the whole gang hanging around over here all the time.
Help me out. I've got Bernstein down there. I like to hang around with him. He's hot. He's fast.
Well, those guys have been pretty successful. They own some of these teams, so apparently they're doing something right.
I know. It makes me wonder, does that mean this is easy? Or does that mean that they're bored? Or what does that mean when they come in here and buy a team and field a car? I'm not real sure. Can you answer that for me?
Well, I tell you, I don't know. Benny, I want to ask you a question. You know, you're in the Folgers car this year, in the decaffeinated car for Rick Hendrick, and you've only made about $370,000 to $400,000, and you're working for ESPN last year. Why'd you take the pay cut this year?
Folks, he's joking. He's joking.
No, Benny. This man is lying.
That's right. He ain't joking. He's flat lying.
That's right.
You know, everybody tells me...
Comprehensive dental plan.
He says, you know, why don't you just do more television because, you know, you do good at it. Why don't you do more television? I said, because I want to eat. That's why I don't do more television.
Yeah, you know, the pay's good. Bring us out in the rain like this and hold us here in this little stall like we are. They pay good money. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Jerry Punch, you're a doctor. Why don't you just quit doctoring and go to work for ESPN?
I like to eat too, Benny. So with that, we'll all be looking for jobs. And
yeah, right.
oh, my friends
go
here.
Down? Did the cable go off?
And Neil didn't win, and Darrell didn't run second, and we are still waiting for a decision here.
Either.
That's right. Still waiting for a decision here at Watkins Glen, and we'll go back upstairs to Bob Jenkins.
Jerry and crew, and we will take a break and be back with more comments from the pit area as the rain, the downpour. Decision yet from NASCAR, but the rain does continue. In fact, in the last 10 minutes or so, it's been raining about as hard as it has all day. So things do not look particularly good for a start of this race here today. Well, we go back to the pit area, and Jerry Punch is with Darrell Waltrip, Benny Parsons, and Neil Bonnet.
Thank you, Bob, and we're back, and we will get serious for just a moment with some of the fellows here. Let's talk about the season to date so far. Darrell, your year...
Let's don't get serious.
Yeah, these guys don't want to talk about that. But you all three have had your ups and downs this year, and Darrell, recently your team has really come together with the addition of Jeff Hammond.
Well, we found out our problem. Took us this long, but we finally figured it out. We've been waxing the car with turtle wax, and we didn't realize that until just a week or two ago, so we stopped doing that. And we started using airplane wax, and it started to run a lot better.
And it doesn't lay eggs either when it comes down pit road. But you've had...
serious enough for you?
Just what I expected, fellas. But the season has turned around a little bit for you. You know, you said Waddell was trying to do it all, and he's just one man and just can't do everything, and Jeff has been a big help to you.
He really has. You know, anytime you got a link missing from a chain like you and I talked, then the chain's going to not stay together, and that was our problem. We were short of one man, and Jeff has done a great job in helping us out, and it's given Waddell more time to work on the engines, and automatically the car's handling better, running better, and that makes me feel better and makes me look better on the racetrack. So this team will work. It'll work. The second half of the year it's going to do good, and I think we're going to win 3 or 4 races, and we're going to try to ease on down there a little closer to Dale in the point standings, and it's going to be tough, but maybe we can make a race out of that before it's over with.
Well, I think you'll see Darrell Waltrip in victory lane before the very near future is gone, and as he tells them next door. And Benny, your season started out awfully well at Daytona. A qualifying race, a victory there, and the runner-up finish in the 500. And I know just a month or so ahead before that, you weren't even planning to be in a lot of the events you raced.
Well, exactly right. I guess it was early January, mid-January, I found out that Tim Richmond did have the pneumonia that I guess everyone is aware of. And I was asked to drive the Folgers car for the year, and so I jumped at it. And you're right, the first month, the first 4 or 5 races that we raced, I said, this is great, because a second in Daytona, second in Atlanta. But I don't know what happened. It's like we ran into a brick wall. Just all of a sudden we go to the racetrack and have problems, which last year the car was very durable. All of a sudden we started having problems. And really and truly, we're not running that well. Just not as competitive as we need to be. So, but we just keep persevering, trying our best. And, we're here at Watkins Glen, qualified poorly, qualified about 15th. Richmond, the teammate, is up 4th. But, I really don't have any answers as to why. Just all of a sudden it don't work like it did.
Well, the crew's very optimistic about your run here at Watkins Glen. The car you're driving was the car that won here a year ago, and they've renamed it Elsie because a couple of guys milked it for all it was worth in the shop, they said, for every hour they could get all it's worth and gave it to me.
Yeah, they got all that's right, got all it was worth and gave it to me. Right.
That's right. And Neil, the season began pretty well for you, but then trouble at Charlotte, boy, those couple of weeks you'd like to forget about, I'm sure.
Well, we've had a lot of consistency all year long. The car showed some potential, possibility of winning some races early in the year. And it's kind of like Darrell and Benny say, you kind of get to a point to where you feel like you're doing everything you can and you can't make that step forward. I don't think it's so much a fact that Darrell or Benny or myself or the performance that falls off, is that some people get to dominate the series. Earnhardt, Bill comes along, Davey Allison, the guys that really get their cars running good. You don't really change your level of competition. Those guys just really get on the ball and start winning races. And in turn, everybody says, well, what's wrong with your team? Your team is functioning well and doing as good as possible. It's just hard to get to that level of racing it takes to win nowadays. We've had good consistency. The difference in winning nowadays is just a very minute amount, but there's some of those people sitting on a level that's hard to catch them.
In defense of, that's how I feel most of the time. In defense of our team, I think we're seeing a trend just like they did. They started off like House, really well, and our team started off very poorly. It seems like our team has improved, where some of the teams that started off great are having problems right now. So from my perspective, I'd rather have it going the way it is for me, then I'm sure Neil and Benny would like to see their team stay where they were. So I think it's two things that happen to new teams. Sometimes they hit right off and go good, and then all of a sudden they run into problems. Sometimes they don't do so well and get it together later on.
Now, wait a minute. If you say that...
I knew he was going to say something about this.
Well, no, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Does that mean I got to give the money from Daytona back if I want the last half to be good? Because that's a lot of money down there.
Well, it could. It could, yeah.
I think I'm going to hang in there with what I got.
I'd be willing to take my part.
I think I'm going to hang in there with what I got.
Well, Bob Jenkins has a question for Benny Parsons. Bob?
Well, Benny, I was just wondering if you're not doing anything when you get down there, you might want to come up and play gin rummy. I think the last 3 or 4 rain delays we've had, you've been up in the booth and we played, and Newber isn't any good, so you want to come up, we'll play some.
Sound like a good contest to me, yeah.
But then again, I always could beat you like a drum, so I'm anxious to play.
Hey, now, folks, you know, 2 or 3 years ago at Bristol, you saw who won the game. He can't play a lick.
They're talking about playing gin rummy and Benny's prowess at winning.
Well, no, Darryl
we can't gamble in the garage area.
No, that's right.
No, so we
right.
Well,
but we were up in the garage area, out of the garage area, you see. I mean, we were up in the booth, the broadcast.
That's right. That's why they go in the booth.
Oh, we just play for fun anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Matchsticks.
Yeah.
Let me ask Neil a question. Neil, the Jericho transmission that people have talked about over the years has been developed to run on the road courses. You have been sort of the leaders in developing and running that not only on the road course but the oval course. What's the advantage of having that thing in the car?
Well, I'll have to confess the reason it helps me so much is the fact that I wasn't that good of a road racer to start with. You know, when you start talking about, I went to Bondurant's driving school, and, you know, you start heel and toeing the throttle and the brake pedal, working the clutch with your left foot. This transmission allows me to, once I leave the pits, I never touch that clutch pedal again. I can brake with my left foot, work the throttle with my right, and shift. So it just took one part of the job away that was giving me a problem, that heel and toe and working around. It lets me drive the race car more. The transmission has been super for me. And, you know, Darrell's using, a lot of guys use the things now. The transmission just take a little bit of work out of it and let the driver drive the race car and not be so concerned about how to work the throttle and pedal.
See, one of the things about a road course in the past years has been the finesse of taking care of the gearbox, because we didn't have good enough gearboxes for road racing. We were using the same gearbox to road race as we would to oval track race. And so the guy that could do what Neil's talking about, heel and toe and match the gears and not tear the gearbox up and not break the synchronizers and be in the pit with a bad gearbox, was the guy that won a lot of races. Now, this gearbox is like you said, it's so easy. This is the first time I ever used one. I had it in at Riverside and I got it in here. I can't believe how easy it works. It scares me it works so easy. A lot of times I go to do something and I think, God, I can get it in gear. And it's just right there every time. And it's really made the job much, much easier.
Well, what we're talking about, the Jericho transmission, as I said, you don't have to have a clutch to change the gears. And
what the difference for you mechanics out there, we talk about a Jericho transmission, you say, well, what is it? Actually, what it is a normal 4-speed transmission has brass rings for synchronizers, and the spline on them is very fine. So it's very difficult to shift the transmission. The Jericho, the spline on the synchronizers are huge. So, and it's a straight cut gear. It's like a truck. The thing just falls into gear in those big dogs on the synchronizers. It's just, they're huge dogs. They're about 1 inch wide, the spline on the synchronizers. And the thing just absolutely falls into gear. You think third gear, and it's in third gear. You don't have, it's like there's no effort at all.
Oh, we'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on Pit Road as we continue to watch the rain.
We're not done yet.
Oh, you're not done yet?
No, there's a lot more to the gearbox. You don't want to know any more? Is that all you want to know?
I think we'd like to. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit later on. But it's still raining here at Watkins Glen, and as we wait for possible sunshine or some word from NASCAR as to what's going to happen here for the Budweiser at the Glen.
Want to talk about a rev limiter?
We get these guys going, we can't get them stopped. We may not get them in the race car. So let's go back upstairs to Bob Jenkins.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Well, I don't know whether any of you three are going to win tomorrow or whenever this race is, but if you don't, you're all winners in our books, and thanks very much for taking time out on this rainy Sunday to spend a few moments with us. As you can see, heavy rain now at the Glen, delaying the start of today's race. In the meanwhile, we go to this week's edition of ESPN Speed Week. Site of the famed Watkins Glen Road Course, where a variety of races have been held over the years, including the U.S. Grand Prix Formula One event. And now for the second straight year, the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. The Grand Prix was held here from 1961 to 1980. Back in 1964, Richard Petty raced here. And he's back again 23 years later. But the old favorites like Phil and Graham Hill have been replaced by the young lions of today. A year ago here, Tim Richmond won.
The car worked great. I mean, Harry Hyde and Whole Folgers crew, they're making me look real good, and they're making it a lot easier on me to win races.
Richmond has an impressive record. Since 1982, he's won more races on a road course than any other active driver. His most recent at Riverside in June. There are a lot of sights to see in this area. Lake Seneca is nearby. So is Montour Falls. You could spend days just sightseeing. But today, some 90,000 fans are here for one reason, to watch 40 drivers renew their quest for the Budweiser at the Glen Winston Cup race. The question on everyone's mind, will Richmond do it again? Welcome you to Watkins Glen, New York, and the Budweiser at the Glen NASCAR Winston Cup race. The weather here today is cloudy, cool, and humid. The temperature only 64 degrees and a 30% chance of rain. It's a much different day from yesterday when at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, NASCAR postponed this event because of heavy rain during the day. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins along with Larry Newber. Well, normally at a Winston Cup race, you can figure on as much as half of the field being eligible for a win. But we're on a road course today, and perhaps, Larry, that number shrinks somewhat.
Bob, traditionally in recent years, it has. The contingent of winners, potential winners on road courses, has been relatively small, and that contingent is near the front again. Ricky Rudd has been very strong on road courses. Tim Richmond, obviously, as well as Terry Labonte. Now, there are some new faces that have crept up there, new to road course. Rusty Wallace is having a very strong weekend, and Jeff Bodine, the winner already of $191,000 this weekend, has a lot of sentiment.
Working pit road for us today, two reporters, Dick Berggren, and now let's go to Dr. Jerry Punch.
There are a lot of contenders here at Watkins Glen, but the favorites there in the front two rows. Tim Richmond, 5 of 13 wins have come on a road course. He's the defending champion of the Budweiser at the Glen. He's back with a brand new car. He will start for it. The local favorite, Jeff Bodine. He won the IROC finale a couple of days ago. $190,000 in his pocket. The local people will be cheering their local favorite on. On the pole, Terry Labonte. And if you believe statistics, he's the man to watch. 3 of the 4 races run here have been won by the pole sitter. A third of Labonte's wins have come on a road course. Well, the dark horse, that would be the Kodiak Pontiac of Rusty Wallace. He's on the outside of the front row. They have come here with a brand new car. They were the fastest car a year ago. They should have won, possibly could have won, but had problems. Beware the bear. The Kodiak Pontiac is on the prowl. Let's go to the editor of Stock Car Racing Magazine, Dick Berggren. Ordinarily, the garage area is abuzz with activity on race morning as mechanics run engines, check transmissions, and go over their cars. That's not been the case today. All these cars have been impounded since the rain delay yesterday afternoon, and mechanics were only allowed to air the tires and warm up the oil a little bit until just moments ago when, for the first time in 24 hours, they started the engines. Mechanics say they're worried. These cars are ice cold. This is not what they're accustomed to. They're accustomed to a very different preparation, and it will give this race a very different complexion when it starts.
All right, thank you, Dick and Jerry. And it's a late arriving crowd filing in to the Watkins Glen Raceway for today's Budweiser at the Glen. And it's all being brought to you by the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. No matter how far you go, Watkins Glen, New York, where the field is on the racetrack, making sure the track is completely dry for competition. It's still a little wet from the rain that we had yesterday and overnight. Right now, though, let's check the starting lineup for today's Winston Cup race. On the pole will be Terry Labonte in the Budweiser Chevrolet with a new track record, 117.956 miles an hour. Alongside will be Rusty Wallace in the number 27 Kodiak Pontiac. In row number 2, Jeff Bodine in the Levi Garrett Exxon Chevrolet, car number 5. Outside of that second row will be Tim Richmond, the defending champion in the Folgers Coffee Exxon Chevrolet number 25. Going to row number 3, the number 26 Quaker State Buick, driven by Morgan Shepherd. And outside will be Phil Parsons in car 55, the Fast Fair Skull Classic Racing Old. In row number 4, in the Motorcraft 4, number 15, Ricky Rudd. Outside of that fourth row will be the Tide Exxon Chevrolet, driven by Darrell Waltrip. Going to row number 5, the Coors Milling Ford, number 9, driven by Bill Elliott, and the Valvoline Pontiac car 75 with Neil Bonnet behind the wheel. In the 6th row will be Dale Earnhardt and Michael Waltrip. Row number 7 has Sterling Marlin and Dave Marcus. Going in row number 8 will be Benny Parsons in number 35 and Rick Wilson in 4. In the 9th row, Bobby Hillen Jr. in car number 8 and Harry Gant in 33. The 10th row, Alan Kulwicki and Dale Jarrett. Making up row number 11 will be Bobby Allison and Richard Petty. In row number 12, Ken Schrader and Kyle Petty. The 13th row consists of Derek Cope and Jocko Magiacomo. The 14th row, Buddy Baker in 88 and Steve Chrisman in 62. Going to row number 15, it'll be Jimmy Means in car number 52 and Patty Moise in her first Winston Cup start, car number 89. In row number 16, J.D. McDuffie and Trevor Boyes. In row number 17, Davey Allison and Rick Knoop. In the 18th row, Tim Rotzel in number 81 and Rodney Combs in 64. In the 19th row, Buddy Arrington and Bill Good. And in the 20th row, starting 39th and 40th, Mike Potter in number 61 and Chuck Schrodel in car number 1. Those are the 40 starters that are getting set to go for 90 laps around this 2.428-mile racetrack. There are 7 corners on this racetrack. It's a very challenging one for the drivers. Larry has a further description of this race course.
Historic Watkins Glen. This course has been changed to a 7-turn, 2.4-mile course for the Winston Cup stock cars. Going down the pit straight, you can see the Formula One type paddock there on the right. You work up to 120, 130 miles an hour, and then surprise, brake hard and head for what is known as the 90. It's called the 90 not because of miles per hour, but because of degrees. That's how sharp that corner is. It's a real tricky part of this racetrack. You spend most of the time in the S turns in 3rd gear. These are turns 2, 3, and 4. You leave the lowest elevation on the racetrack and head up for the highest elevation down the back straight. Reaching speeds of perhaps 175 miles an hour. There's a slight bump that you'll feel at 175 miles an hour as you head towards the loop. This is 270 degrees, the radius on this corner. You experience 1.3 Gs. That's about 5 times what you would pick up in a pleasure car exiting a freeway. Now headed towards turn 6 and turn 7. Turn 6 is one of 2 left-handers on this course. Turn 7, coming up after this left-hander, is the final one as you head for the pit straight. Following Kyle Petty here, Benny Parsons driving Elsie, trying to complete 1 lap. And the drivers to a man will tell you when asked, what is the toughest part at executing the Glen? Just surviving 1 lap safely.
When you get close to Watkins Glen, the little village at the base of the hill that we are sitting atop of, you can feel the history surrounding this place, Larry.
Bob, you really can. They have raced here since the late 1940s. Of course, much of its history surrounds road course racing, sports car racing, but it's very exciting to have the Winston Cup stock cars here. The Winston Cup drivers tell us this track is perhaps one of the better suited road courses that they have found for their 3,500-pound monsters.
Last year, it was a tremendous race with Tim Richmond winning, and we expect an equally exciting race here this afternoon. There are clouds in the sky, but no rain, at least for the moment, here at Watkins Glen. Moves up through the S's here at Watkins Glen, getting set for a start next time around. 40 cars are on the racetrack, warming up their cars and making sure the track is dry before we get the green flag. Starting back in 15th position will be Benny Parsons. In the Folgers Coffee Citrus Hill Chevrolet, he qualified at 115.823 miles an hour, and Benny will be carrying our in-car camera throughout the race today, the Hardee's Race Cam.
This is the backstretch, more than a half a mile in length. It's the longest stretch on this course, 2.4 miles around, remember. Top speed about 175 miles an hour. See Michael Waltrip there ahead on the left. Cars moving back and forth, the characteristic swishing as the drivers attempt to work as much heat into the tires as they possibly can. That's a very critical item on a road course because as many times as you go down the front chute or the pit straight, whatever it happens to be called at the particular road course you're at, and you go into that first turn, it's still somewhat of a surprise. It always comes up abruptly when you finally stand on the throttle for real. And it's a very important part of the race. You have to concentrate deeply on the first turn, which here at Watkins Glen is a right-hander.
And starting back in the 30th position will be Patty Moise. She's been very successful in Kelly American and in Grand National racing and makes her first Winston Cup start here this afternoon.
And Bob, for any of our viewers who are not familiar with Patty, you've seen some women in certain phases of the sport come on from time to time, and you've wondered about their sincerity or the realness, if you will, as a racer. I will tell you, Patty Moise is without question for real. She is a strong racer, and I really expect that Patty is going to be one of the lady racers in America who has the most longevity in our sport.
They're now moving through turn number 6. A short stretch of racetrack. There it is before they get to turn 7, the final one that will lead them on to the main straightaway, and hopefully a green flag displayed by the NASCAR starter, Harold Kinder. The pace car and the field now beginning to move through that final corner on the racetrack. Number 7, it's Terry Labonte on the pole with Rusty Wallace alongside, and Jeff Bodine and Tim Richmond in that second row. The pace car pulls off. And after a long delay because of rain, the Budweiser at the Glen Winston Cup race is underway, and the field roars down this main straightaway. Headed for turn number 1. Labonte on the inside, Rusty Wallace to the outside. They go into the first turn, and Rusty drops back to third as Jeff Bodine has grabbed that second spot.
Bodine to the lead. Jeff Bodine, fresh off of the IROC win and championship for 1987, takes to the lead. One comment about Darrell Waltrip. Jerry mentioned before the race started he felt that Rusty Wallace was one of the sleepers. I suggest that Darrell Waltrip may be one of the sleepers in the field. You can see the bright orange side car.
There is Jeff Bodine showing the way as the cars move down the backstretch, and we have a spin. Buddy Baker has spun in that car number 88 Crisco Oldsmobile. However, he is getting himself headed in the right direction, and Buddy Baker will resume, but you can see damage there on the left rear corner of the race car. But Buddy is headed in the right direction now, and the field at full speed is led by Jeff Bodine. That's Terry Labonte running second. Rusty Wallace is third. They are about to complete the first lap. There they are between, again, turns number 6 and 7. Bodine moves through the 7th corner, headed the main straightaway. Lap number 1 is completed with Bodine the leader.
Bob, the man with the big move on lap 1 was Neil Bonnet. You might have seen the Valvoline Pontiac dicing as he came down the front stretch. There he is again on the left-hand side of your screen. Bonnet is feeling very strong. He is right now testing Tim Richmond. Neil Bonnet has had a great start. There's Ricky Rudd also taking a look on the low side of Morgan Shepherd.
Neil Bonnet has moved to 5th position. There he is in the number 75 car. He's moved to 5th behind Tim Richmond there, who is running in 4th position in car number 25. So a good start for Neil Bonnet, who started back in 10th positions and picked up 5 spots in that very first lap. And there he goes to the inside, testing Tim Richmond now as they head for another corner, and he has got him. Bonnet is reeling on the move. He's moved to 4th already.
Neil is feeling very racy today. He is one of those teams that they have been near the top many times this year, and they're so hungry for a win, and they keep saying, I think this is our week. I think this is our week. And it's been a matter of numbers, I think, for Neil Bonnet. He has certainly shown the capability as well as that team of running up front and winning.
As you can see in the graphic there, he is currently in 4th position in the point standings, but until the most recent Winston Cup race before this one, he was in 2nd position in the points. Let's go to Dick Bergeron.
Bob Jenkins, if you want to know who the favorite is in this race, at least with the crowd who's assembled, for sure is Jeff Bodine. When he came by on that first lap with the lead, this whole place got up on its feet, cheered and applauded. He just came by again. They did the same thing. When Bodine comes by, the whole grandstand stands up for him.
This is almost like watching a Formula One race, Larry, in Italy, when every time the Ferrari goes by, they stand and cheer. They're doing exactly the same thing with their hometown favorite, Jeff Bodine.
Bob, the crowd was so enthusiastic when Jeff qualified. He said, I think that I could have gone faster, as we see Rusty Wallace temporarily look to the inside of Terry Labonte. Nothing there. Jeff said the crowd was so enthusiastic when he went through the S's. They were all standing up and cheering. It distracted him, and it kept him from what he felt was maybe a better shot at the pole.
But it isn't where you start, it's where you finish. And right now, Jeff Bodine is the leader. Our battle for 2nd position is a quite good one. It involves the pole sitter, Terry Labonte, and the 2nd place starter, Rusty Wallace. And then comes Neil Bonnet, followed by Tim Richmond, and then Phil Parsons as the rest of the field streams by.
Dave Marcus there in the light boy, number 71. Marcus, of course, still very much involved with the IROC cars, in which Jeff Bodine won on Saturday of this past weekend. And Michael Waltrip heads quickly to the pit area, trailing smoke.
You can see smoke start coming from that race car on the backstretch, and Michael Waltrip has pulled into the pit area in that All-Pro Auto Parts sponsored Chevrolet. They raised the hood on the car. This is certainly an unscheduled and could be serious pit stop. The crew works frantically to correct the problem that they have found in that engine compartment. Perhaps Dick Berggren has more information.
Well, it's a little tough to tell right now, Bob Jenkins. They are working under the hood of this car. I can smell smoke. They came in with smoke. Car owner Dick Bear is in there with a screwdriver on the right front corner of it. Smoke coming out from underneath the engine. They are under the hood. More on pit road, Jerry Punch. Well, Buddy Baker spun on the very first lap. I'm with his crew chief, Doug Reichert. And Doug, what happened out there to Buddy?
Well, what I can understand what he said is evidently he spun going up the backstretch there, and it looks like very little damage. He come back around. He just lost a little ground, but he's still in good spirits, and I think we have a good run going here today. We just got to get caught back up and finish the race.
Well, minimal sheet metal damage on the Crisco Oldsmobile for Buddy Baker.
Well, you remember a year ago at this race, Buddy decided to set out the event and allow Al Unser Sr. to take over that ride, and Al himself had a couple of problems during the course of the race, and Buddy, the first really in trouble here in this race this year. There's again that battle for second position as Jeff Bodine continues to lead. Labonte has been holding off the challenge of Rusty Wallace. It appears as if Rusty may have the faster car, but just cannot find the opportunity to pass Terry Labonte.
Back to that Baker situation just a bit, just to give you an idea how much of a difference 20 years make. Buddy has finished third here at Watkins Glen in 1965. He was third. His father, Buck, won in 57 and was fourth in 1964. So there's a lot of Baker heritage here at Watkins Glen.
And that is Bill Elliott, believe it or not, who is moving to the inside of the racetrack and allowing the field to go by him. There must be something wrong. Yes, there's serious problems with the number 9 Coors Spelling Ford. A lot of smoke pouring from that race car. Bill Elliott will be coming in with serious mechanical problems.
Bill Elliott, who has won on Super Speedway twice already in 1987. Now watch for Elliott in a red car. He'll dart down to the left of your screen, and there you see the smoke as he trails Darrell Waltrip right in front of Dale Earnhardt, and Bill Elliott heads for the cellar to get out of the way.
So an unfortunate incident for Bill Elliott as we are early in this event, and he is headed for pit road.
It almost doesn't look like something in the engine compartment, Bob. I don't think that's engine. We see a left rear tire that's flat. That's one of the problems, or at least it is extensively out of air.
Well, let's go to Dick. Maybe he can tell us what's going on.
Well, right now the crew doesn't know what's going on. They do have Elliott in the pit area here. They're jacking it up. The engine is silent at this moment. Interestingly, they are not going under the hood. They are jacking the car up. They apparently are going to go underneath it. They are looking at the rear end. No service has gone on so far. This is a very serious problem, whatever it is, and so far they haven't got it. They don't know what it is for sure.
So we'll continue to watch that situation involving Bill Elliott, who has pitted early in the Budweiser at the Glen. We have completed 6 laps, and Jeff Bodine in the Levi Garrett Chevrolet leads Rusty Wallace and Terry Labonte. Watkins Glen International Raceway, Rusty Wallace has moved to second. The move was made during the time that we were keeping an eye on Bill Elliott, who had something go wrong with the car, and he has pulled into the pit area, and the crew continues to work on it. They're concentrating their efforts at the rear of the race car. There was a tremendous amount of smoke coming from that car. Elliott is sitting helplessly in the pit area, waiting for repairs to be made.
It was drivetrain related, Bob. Certainly not engine, as Dick reported. They did not go underneath the hood. The standard bar is back there. Of course, the rear end is something very important on a road course. It's something back in the rear end, and it's not engine related.
There is Jeff Bodine continuing to lead, but Rusty Wallace is keeping right up with him. Rusty able to pass Terry Labonte, and now Wallace is within just a few car lengths of the hometown favorite.
You're going to see a stark contrast in driving style. Watch Bodine compared to Rusty Wallace. They're both effective. I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just two different approaches to a road course. Jeff Bodine was satiny smooth when he won IROC 2 days ago. Rusty Wallace, there you see Terry Labonte putting in a good dirt track slide as he came out of turn number 1. But watch Rusty Wallace slide around the turn. A little bit too much that time as he came to the S's. Rusty bounces off the inside curb. No, that does not hurt the car. Normally they'll take it. But Rusty Wallace will jockey this thing like a wild stallion as he runs around the road course. As you will see Jeff Bodine, he'll take a slightly different approach.
Well, Jeff Bodine has a victory on a road course at Riverside. He was the winner of the 1984 race at Riverside, so he has won one. Rusty Wallace, on the other hand, has never won on a road course. And we had a chance earlier to talk with this guy from Shalom, New York, Jeff Bodine.
I like to come here and show everyone from down south that the northeastern people, the people other than the southern people, like Winston Cup racing. I think last year they proved that with the tremendous crowd they had, and this year it's been absolutely amazing. They were lined up out in the streets all around this place Thursday to get into this track just to watch practice. These people up here love racing, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to be a part of that, and proud to be from here. And there's a lot of fun coming back and seeing all those people, the relatives, the friends. I like to come back here more than once a year.
Jeff Bodine is beginning to catch up now with the slower cars at the rear of the field as he continues at tremendous pace, but Rusty Wallace is right there with him.
Bodine enjoys this area so much. Matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, he came back in the middle of the Winston Cup weekend and ran a modified at the 5/8 mile oval at Oswego, New York, a place where he ran many times in a modified, a few times in a super modified. Jeff Bodine still strap on the helmet and kick his feet inside an open wheeler every once in a while.
But Rusty Wallace is certainly not letting Jeff get ahead, because Rusty, as we noted earlier, was able to pass the pole sitter Terry Labonte, and now he is right on the back bumper of Jeff Bodine. They come down the straightaway and complete lap number 9.
Here comes Rusty.
And Rusty moves aside. We have a spin involving car number 81. That's Tom Rotzel. He has spun on the course and apparently is stalled there in a rather precarious situation. So unless this car can get going again, it appears he will be able to get that car moving again. We could have a yellow flag, but I really doubt it. Let's take a look and see if we can see what happened.
Tom Rotzel, there you see him spinning off the left-hand upper corner of your screen, now a full-frame center. Yes, that is a new name for many of you. And there is Chuck Schrodel, who is in Henley Gray's car. He's got a mechanical problem. Chuck Schrodel running the number 1 for points for Haas Ellington this week, but that is Henley Gray's car. Chuck Schrodel, who is a practice goalie for NHL hockey team, he is trying to turn in a strong performance this weekend here in the road course at Watkins Glen.
So the top runners are all trying to move by him. There is where the engine let go on the Schrodel car, and here come the leaders, and look at Rusty making contact with Jeff, almost taking Jeff out. However, they have he did manage to regain control of that car, but a slippery moment there for the leader Bodine and Rusty Wallace. The yellow flag will come out. We have an overall yellow flag on lap number 11.
Yeah, difficult to tell if there was oil on the surface or just because of braking. And everybody's coming into the pit. Lap 11. Give you an idea what the pit strategy could be here. Now, Rusty and Jeff have to come in because that contact, Jeff got into the outer retaining wall. You can see some damage to the right side of the car. We're going to go 90 laps here. 38 laps would have been a relatively normal pit stop. But with some strange windows, which we'll get into as this race goes on, everyone's going to take this opportunity here early on to come in and check everything out, particularly the condition of the brakes. If the driver can give any feedback to the crew, the brakes are so critical. And for Bodine and Wallace, this is a very important pit stop.
You can see the frantic activity on pit road. Dale Earnhardt is pulling out, and we have Terry Labonte and Neil Bonnet and Richard Petty all stacked up there. Here comes Rusty Wallace out of the pit area, and Bodine apparently is boxed in. He simply cannot get out of the pit area. Jerry Punch is in that area.
Well, Jeff Bodine came down pit road as the leader, and what Gary Nelson told me might happen before the race has happened. Richard Petty, who's pitting in front of him, or other cars, because the narrative of pit road is pitting on the outside of Bodine. They cannot get Jeff Bodine's car off of pit road, and now they have changed more tires, and now problem for Bodine. They are beneath the hood of the Levi Garrett Chevrolet. We'll check and see what that problem might be.
Well, a real dramatic turn of events here as Bodine looked very strong, was leading the race, came in for what appeared to be a routine pit stop, but something has gone wrong because they have raised the hood on that car and working extensively now in the engine compartment.
I believe it is bodywork they're working on, Bob. That's my best guess there in the right front fender. They don't seem to be reaching any tools inside the engine compartment. I think it's a bodywork problem.
So the field is slowed under the caution flag that was displayed because of a blown engine by Chuck Schrodel and Tom Rossel's spinning. And you can see that the number 61 car, Mike Potter, is the first behind the pace car, then Bill Elliott, who has come back out on the racetrack, and Dale Earnhardt. Lane under yellow at the Watkins Glen International Raceway. And the field behind the pace car now, right behind the pace car, is Bill Elliott and Dale Earnhardt, and Morgan Shepherd is also right there. Earnhardt here at the Glen led 86 points by 161 over Waltrip coming into this race. Leads Elliott by 430 this year. So Dale Earnhardt is on his way to another Winston Cup championship. And now an interesting observation about this course.
Possibly the fastest and most treacherous part of this Watkins Glen road course is right here, turn 5. At the very end of this 5/8 of a mile backstretch. Speed from stock cars over 170 miles per hour. They try to get these cars woed down. They gear down and try to go downhill in this turn 5, 170-degree about face. A lot of drivers don't make this turn. The car starts skipping. They end up in this barrier, this Armco barrier. Last year during qualifying, Bill Elliott's car got about face, came up and rode across the barrier, almost destroying the race car. Had to be almost completely rebuilt to race the next day. A number of drivers today may end up in this barrier at turn 5.
So far, no problems in that area of the racetrack, but there are problems on the Jeff Bodine car. You can see the crew working on the right front of that car. Jerry, what's going on?
Well, we talked about them getting together with another car on the course earlier just as the caution was coming out, and they are livid here in the Levi Garrett pit. Crew Chief Gary Nelson says there are a number of things in the front of the car that are bent. The wheel is towed out, means the right front tire faces outward. Some of the control arms are bent. Possibly an A-frame is bent or maybe broken. They are trying. A shock mount may have come apart. They have tried now in the second pit stop here under caution to get as much repair as possible, but what a tough break for Jeff Bodine. Let's go further up pit road to Dick Bergeron. Jerry, Bodine is not the only guy that's had a tough day so far. Bill Elliott's definitely in deep trouble. The problem he had earlier that caused him to pit was that the rod, which locates the rear end in the car, is attached to a bracket. That bracket broke. The weld apparently gave way. They've now reattached a different rod in a different manner. The whole way that the car rolls going through corners is, as a result, changed. In addition, just up pit road from Elliott, Morgan Shepherd has just run over his air hose on the most recent pit stop. That will cost him a penalty. We should point out that many of the teams here today are not operating with their regular pit road contingent. Many of the guys who work Winston Cup races work a normal job during the week, and they had to fly home yesterday. So there's been a tremendous amount of scrambling on pit road because some of these teams have really not fully worked together. Even the best teams, even Tim Richmond's team, is not working with its full regular complement.
And that's just another factor that is going to enhance the excitement of this race here today. It could very well be won and lost in the pit area. So the field still under yellow now, as you can see the course workers displaying the yellow in addition to the overall yellow flag that is being waved here at the starter stand by Harold Kinder. We are at long Jerry Punch and Dick Bergeron at Watkins Glen, New York for the Budweiser at the Glen Winston Cup race. The field is under yellow for a couple of reasons, a blown engine and a spin, and this is one incident during that caution period, or just as the yellow was coming out because of this incident with Chuck Schrodel unloading an engine apparently, and then this contact between Jeff Bodine and Rusty Wallace.
You see Rusty comes up behind Jeff, gets into Jeff, and Jeff is propelled into the wall. I tell you, you shake your head in utter amazement. You see Schrodel losing lots of something from his motors. He motors on down the racetrack. But some people are just having unbelievably poor luck this season.
Let's go to Jerry Punch, who's with Gary Nelson of the Bodine crew.
Well, if they didn't have any bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all, is what Gary Nelson was saying. And Gary, what's the damage report on the Chevrolet?
Well, the suspension's been up on the right front, knocked the alignment off. We readjusted it by, the best we could, but we're going to have our work cut out for us for the rest of the day.
I heard you were telling Jeff the car is still towed out a little bit, meaning the right front tire is pointing outwardly on the track. That'll make it a little tough for him to drive, particularly on a road course.
Well, it scrubs the front tires. You know, when he's going straight, the right tire wants to go right and the left tire wants to go left, and it just kind of ends up scrubbing a lot of speed. We adjusted it pretty good. We got it. We don't have it perfect, and we never will without replacing a lot of suspension pieces. So we're going to try and see how we run. Maybe we can get competitive. We got a ways to go. We'll see what happens.
Well, they're optimistic, but trouble again this year for Jeff Bodine and the Levi Garrett team.
Crew chief on the team, Gary Nelson, there with Jerry Punch. As you can see, the field streaming down the backstretch once again, awaiting the restart of this race. Now, here is a shot of the pit area, and it's really quite narrow and not a whole lot of room to work, Larry.
Well, the biggest aspect is this is a traditional Formula One pit paddock area. And the Formula One cars, of course, which are much smaller than the Winston Cup cars, line up in pit road. These stalls are large enough. They're only about 1 car length in width, and seldom is there a point in a Formula One race where more than 4 or 5 cars in the pits at one time. So these pit stalls are plenty large enough to be suitable for Formula One or Formula Car racing, but not for Winston Cup racing when upwards to 20 to 25 cars all try to cram into the pit area at one time.
We've had our first series of pit stops, and Dale Earnhardt is the leader with Benny Parsons second, Terry Labonte third, then Rusty Wallace and Tim Richmond. It is a very overcast Monday here at Watkins Glen. The race yesterday rained out, but now we have no rain in the area, but still clouds look very ominous. The forecast, though, only about a 30% chance of rain, and we hope it stays away so we can complete this race.
Theoretically, theoretically, everybody can do this on 2 pit stops, and despite this early first pit stop, can they go the rest of the way? Well, surprisingly enough, yes. The 100-mile window is 38 laps long, and this is a 90-lap race. That means if you can come in at lap 52, theoretically, you should be able to go the distance. Now, we have completed 14 laps, so if you go 100 more miles, 38 more laps, 14 plus 38 is 52. Hey, we're right at the window. So if we go green the rest of this day, maybe everybody can go on 1 more stop. Now, depending upon all the variables in road racing, chances are nobody will try to go on 1 more stop, but we'll see.
We also understand that it is raining in Vermont, the site of the Volvo International Tennis Tournament, and the finals featuring Yvonne Lindell and John McEnroe will be coming up right after our coverage of this race here in New York. And we should be going back green this next time around. Bill Elliott is the car behind the pace car. However, he is a lap down, and so the leader is the second man in line. That, of course, is Dale Earnhardt, and we're trying to see if we can get a glimpse of Jeff Bodine, but he is way back in the field, although we don't believe that he lost a lap during the repairs that his car had to undergo. There he is. He's like the 4th or 3rd or 4th car from the tail of the field, so he has got a lot of moving up to do, and he's beginning to do so already as the green does come out, and we resume this Winston Cup race. Harold Kinder, we're watching him. He has the black flag in hand, and we believe that he is going to give the black flag. Well, he didn't give it to Dale Earnhardt, but he did give it to somebody. We'll check with the NASCAR officials.
I think he gave it to Jeff Bodine, who ducked to the pits anyway.
Okay.
I bet it's a stop and go.
All right, there it is, and Bodine does indeed get a stop-and-go penalty, but he goes back out onto the racetrack.
Calculated risk. Had to take the shot because he knows he's so far back. He wants to find out how that car is performing. He's starting at the tail anyway, so it was the move he had to make.
There is Terry Labonte on the very inside of the racetrack, going to the inside and passing Benny Parsons in number 35, and Dale Earnhardt, who is leading the race. Might we have seen some smoke coming from that car? There is Benny Parsons, our Hardee's race cam, and he is being passed now by Rusty Wallace, and sneaking up on the right side is Tim Richmond.
Remember the top of the show, we talked about Rudd, Richmond, and Wallace. You say, well, where is Ricky Rudd? Well, he's in that group also, as well as Tim Richmond being up front. The people who have been running up front on road courses have ascended there again.
Here they come down the main straightaway once again. Dale Earnhardt moving to the inside of Bill Elliott. And as they go into turn number 1, Elliott will pass, Earnhardt will pass Bill Elliott. as he moves high on the racetrack, and everybody else sort of moves to the inside. That's Rusty Wallace moving alongside of Terry Labonte, and Rusty still on the move in that Kodiak Pontiac. He moves to second.
Bob, I think that Rusty Wallace is the one man who has shown us more horsepower and more willpower, more muscle that a lot of announcers like to say than anybody else in the field today. Rusty Wallace running second right now in the Kodiak car, the Kodiak Pontiac, the white with the green and brown bear trim. It's the man on the move. He's been that way all day. I think Rusty's biggest challenge is to not save the car, but to preserve it so that he can do this all day long.
We saw this gentlemanly and sportsmanlike manner in which Bill Elliott moved to the inside of the racetrack as they went down the backstretch to allow the faster cars and those on the lead lap to pass him, as Elliott, as we indicated earlier, had some mechanical problems and came in for a long pit stop. There is Dale Earnhardt, followed closely by Rusty Wallace. Let's see if Rusty puts a move on him here. He's going to move to the inside of the racetrack, coming down the straightaway. The inside line is the line to have because it is a right-hander, and Rusty Wallace grabs the lead from Dale.
He really put the pass on him, didn't he? He moved over on Dale a little bit and said, Dale, I'm not going to make this easy on you. You gave him about a car length and, it appeared to be about an Ayrton Senna tire width between the car length and the grass. And then he moved away from Dale as they started going down the straightaway. He used whatever draft was there, and once Rusty got to the lead, then he kicked away.
Dale Earnhardt has never won on a road course, and he is, of course, the Winston Cup points leader. He now is being challenged for second position by Terry Labonte, and Labonte grabs second place now, putting Dale back to third, and here comes Tim Richmond on the inside in the Folgers, red Folgers car number 25.
The drivers told us they felt this would be a much better race than what we had in 1986. Everybody came here not exactly tentative, but they were scouting. This year, all the teams came back and said, hey, we learned some things last year. We know what we're doing. Everybody seemed to be a little more comfortable right out of the box, and this has been great racing. This has been terrific racing for a road course.
And there is Ricky Rudd that you mentioned earlier, Larry. He is in 5th position, and back in 6th is the Time Machine driven by Darrell Waltrip. Three abreast racing. There is the front end damage, by the way, on Jeff Bodine's car, but look at this tremendous scramble as Tim Richmond has passed Dale Earnhardt, and now Tim goes to 3rd, Earnhardt back to 4th, and Ricky Rudd is looking for the chance to pass Earnhardt. Let's go to Jerry Punch, who has some information on Dale Earnhardt.
Well, during that caution flag pit stop, Dale Earnhardt, who had been running back about 12th to 13th spot, came in and took fuel only, no tire change. The reason, well, car owner Richard Childers says he'd like to get the car up front, put it up in the front of the pack and see if they can stay there. Meanwhile, Labonte, Rusty Wallace, and most of the other cars came in and took 4 fresh tires. Now, Earnhardt does not have fresh tires, and Ricky Rudd also got fresh tires, so he's moving around. Earnhardt drifting back in the pack with Wallace, Labonte, and the guys that changed tires moving toward the front.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Well, while we watch this battle up front, we'll give you some information on Jeff Bodine. He's still trying to work his way up to the front. He has passed 9 cars in the past couple of laps, but is still a long way from the lead pack.
Bill Elliott has pulled into the pit area. They have gone inside the paddock, the covered garage space. Bill Elliott work being performed on that car, and the number 12 car, the Roger Hamby machine, being driven today as it was this weekend by Trevor Boyce, has also come into the pits with a sour-sounding engine. You know, Bob, look who we have up front. We have Rusty Wallace, but we have those 3 people that we mentioned that have been the mainstays on road courses in recent races in Winston Cup racing. Labonte, Richmond, and Rudd, and there on the left side of your screen is Jeff Bodine trying to move up as he goes to the inside of Patty Moise and putting the challenge on Michael Waltrip perhaps next.
Damage there on the left side of the race car, but he is still moving up through the field.
If you were watching very closely, there was an interesting moment there when Jeff went into turn number 1. He got to the inside of Patty Moise. Patty gave him the room. She held his line, and it was as Jeff went by, he waved. Thanks, Patty. You qualify.
Rick Wilson and Richard Petty also running together on the racetrack, as the lead continues to be held by Rusty Wallace, and now this battle for second spot, Terry Labonte and Tim Richmond, who's beginning to show some strength here in the relatively early going of this race. Tim Richmond with 5 road course wins and they have all come since 1982. And his most recent victory on a road course was earlier this year at Riverside, California. He's got that Chevrolet position right behind Terry Labonte.
Terry Labonte, Tim Richmond, second and third. Every once in a while, as we watch this tussle for second, you see a glimpse of the bright orange car. There is the top of your screen, Darrell Waltrip, running fifth. Believe it or not, he is the second leading all-time winner on a road course among the active drivers in Winston Cup. There is Darrell. There you can see him. There you see the leader go by. Second, third, fourth running Ricky Rudd. And there is Darrell Waltrip, who has just gotten around Dale Earnhardt.
We have a yellow flag being displayed for some reason. We'll check our spotters throughout the course and find out if there is a problem somewhere. But Harold Kinder is vigorously waving the yellow flag, and so are the corner workers.
Well, let's go to Bodine. Let's just put him back in it.
There is Darrell Waltrip, who, as you indicated, Larry, has the second highest number of road course wins, 5, his most recent in 86. But aside from that, he has not performed well most recently. He won one in 79, 2 in 80, and 1 in 81,
Wallace.
And then 86. And here is Rusty Wallace coming in for a pit stop. And I would have to think this is for something more than routine maintenance, although we see Terry Labonte also coming in, as is Ricky Rudd, Dale Earnhardt, Darrell Waltrip, Morgan Shepherd, and others. There's Terry Labonte's Junior Johnson machine.
One reason why they will all come in, sometimes or more often than not, it's to top off the fuel. But on a road course, the caution flag laps last so long, you can get a lot of work done and get back out on the track with no risk of losing a lap. Jerry is in Dale Earnhardt's pit.
Well, the Dale Earnhardt team welcomes this yellow flag. Remember, they didn't change tires the first time they came in. They got fuel only. Now they come in and they will change more tires. But the reason you see people like Terry Labonte and Rusty Wallace and all the others come down pit road is they want to keep that fuel tank as full as possible. With the threatening skies here in Watkins Glen, rain could occur any minute. So when we get close to the halfway point, they don't want to have to pit for fuel. They want to be able to settle it on the racetrack.
Well, that is an interesting observation. We keep thinking that it isn't going to rain because the forecast doesn't call for any, but then we probably should keep that in mind, that it could go only to the halfway point and perhaps a little beyond, maybe not to the conclusion of this race. Well, Neil Bonnet is now the first car behind the pace car and is leading the Budweiser at the Glen. Out here at Watkins Glen with 21 laps completed out of 90. That will make up the Budweiser at the Glen. The reason we are yellow is because Trevor Boyd's car stalled on course, and they're going to have to get it off the racetrack before we can go back green.
We commented earlier that visually it looked like that Rusty Wallace may have the superior car in today's race. We are fortunate to be riding with Rusty. Rusty, what do you think? Is that a pretty accurate description?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm real happy with the way the car's running and everything, Larry. I didn't hear the beginning of the question, but I just hope we can finish this thing out the way I'm starting the race off with. This thing sure is handling great. The boys have done a good job. Hopefully the rain will hold up for us and we get this thing in. I just can't say how good this thing's handling and running right now. Keep my head together, keep brakes on this thing, and hopefully we'll be there at the end.
Rusty, with the threat of rain, are you going to try and go to the lead at every opportunity and not hold back?
Well, Larry, I want to keep the car in the lead. I want to keep that cool air going to the brake ducts and try to keep the brakes cool. When I can lead, run my own pace, I can back out of the throttle where I want to. I can govern the race and govern how hard I push my car. So, yeah, it's a lot easier to stay in front.
Rusty, let's go back about 10 or 15 laps to the incident with Jeff Bodine. Oil on the racetrack, heavier braking from Jeff than you anticipated, or what happened?
Well, what happened, the number 1 car blew a motor coming up the hill, and I was just right behind Jeff, really dogging her pretty hard on his bumper. When that motor blew, there was barely enough time for both of us to slow down, and I bumped Jeff back in, and I got him in the guardrail. His car looked like it was still going. I don't know what's going on with it right now. I didn't see the wheels bent up. Just looked like a quarter panel or something. So I hope Jeff has a good race, and I hope I've got a good race, and hope that incident didn't hurt anything.
Okay, Rusty, we'll keep plugging. You are definitely among the candidates today.
Most certainly.
I tell you what, Larry, how about you do me a favor and shoot me a prayer up on that satellite and let the good Lord let me win this thing today.
You got a deal, Rusty.
Well, this most recent caution period did indeed help Jeff Bodine. You can see him not too far now, back in the string of cars. I believe is running in 6th position, as a lot of the cars in front of him have been lapped. So Bodine certainly benefited from this caution period that we are now under because of Trevor Boyd's stalled race car on the track. They come down and get the signal for one more lap to go. Transmissions, very important in any type of racing, including here at Watkins Glen.
Transmission shifting is critical in running any road course. But there's some differing philosophy in use this weekend here at Watkins Glen. This is the transmission Terry Labonte will have in the car, the conventional Borg-Warner transmission. Notice the angle-cut gearing. All the gears spline to a single shaft. Also, these brass synchronizer rings can be a problem. This transmission requires a clutch to shift, and you may shift 10 or 12 times around the course. Here's the new kid on the block, the new Jericho transmission. Straight-cut gears, no synchronizer rings, and these individual gears can be lifted out to change the ratios. Therefore, you may minimize shifting. In fact, Neil Bonnet and Bill Elliott both will have this transmission in their cars. They may shift 6 or 7 times for one lap and save a lot of time.
All right, thank you, Jerry. And there is Jeff Bodine passing through your screen, and there is somewhat of a discussion as to whether he is on the lead lap or lost a lap, and now we get confirmation that he is in the lead lap, so Bodine is in the top 10 at this point. We'll be back with more from Watkins Glen, New York after these messages. Slowly under caution. However, next time around we should be getting the green flag and a resumption of this race with 24 laps about to be completed.
Just to reconfirm some other stories that we've been tracking today, it was a Panhard bar problem with Bill Elliott, and they're still thrashing away trying to get that solved. Kenny Schrader has also had some problems in the rear axle area of his machine, and those problems appear to be the kind that are going to hold him back from any chance that he might have had for a top finish here today.
Neil Bonnet is the leader of the race with Phil Parsons second and Rusty Wallace, followed by Terry Labonte, Darrell Waltrip, Ricky Rudd, and there is Jeff Bodine. He is listed in 10th position on the restart as the green comes back out. Now Rusty Wallace moves to the inside once again, trying to pass Phil Parsons as they head for turn number 1. He's got second position. Rusty setting sail now for the leader, Neil Bonnet.
You heard Rusty tell us during that yellow flag that he wants to run up front. He wants that cool air to continue to blow through his Pontiac as he streams around this 2.4-mile course. One of the real big questions as we see Bodine go by there in the yellow and white Levi Garrett Chevy is how well are his tires going to stand up? We were told by Gary Nelson that the towing situation was anything but perfect, and is that being over-abusive to the tire? We won't know until about 10, 15 laps from now.
And there is Darrell Waltrip moving to the inside of Dave Marcus in the number 71 Lifeboy car, and Jeff Bodine is right on Darrell Waltrip's rear bumper as they come out of turn number 5 and head down turn number 4, heading down the backstretch.
Bob, I'll tell you something. If Bodine continues to show the ability to race back up to the front like he is right now, I'm about to be very impressed with Gary Nelson and to put that car together without anything except, geez, I think this is right. It's working.
Phil Parsons beginning to fall back just a little bit as Terry Labonte moves to the inside on the main straightaway. And look at Jeff Bodine also moving to the inside and passing Darrell Waltrip. Bodine picks up another position, and it appears as if that car is working well as Terry Labonte has passed Phil Parsons, and now Ricky Rudd to the inside on the right-hander, and he too passes Phil.
No, that is not faster cars coming up in the back of the pack and putting a lap on Phil Parsons. Phil Parsons has been very much in the thick of it all weekend long. Phil Parsons running the top 5. And there's Neil Bonnet. It looks like an engine. Flames coming from underneath the hood of the Valvoline Pontiac as Bonnet goes to the right-hand side of the road down the backstretch. And that looks highly terminal. There's no way he's going to get all the way around to the pit.
And so goes the year with Neil Bonnet. He has numerous top 10 finishes that put him second in the point standings, but in the most recent race at Talladega, he finished 32nd after having been involved in an incident. He was still running at the end of that race, however, but finished 32nd and dropped back to 4th in the point standings. And now Neil Bonnet is going to pick up only a few points here, it appears, as what appears to be an engine lets go as he comes out of that fifth turn. A big plume of smoke, and you can even see some fire coming from underneath that race car. Neil takes it to the inside, pulls off the race course, and Neil Bonnet is silent in the Valvoline Pontiac.
Boy, to go out of the lead that way. There's Bodine getting around with a little bit of a nudge from Dave Marcus as they go into turn number 1. Neil Bonnet, who has told us he's going to try pro stock drag racing in the near future. He's very enthused about that, very serious. He's talking with Raymond Beadle and Kenny Bernstein in the pit area this weekend here at Watkins Glen about it.
Jeff Bodine is certainly not out of this race as the damage on the front end appears to have not settled that car down very much and not slowed it down. And Jeff Bodine continues to move his way through traffic and is at the present time being shown all the way up to 5th.
Derek Cope directly in front. Derek Cope racing a little bit with Jeffrey. Remember, Derek slides out of turn number 4 there. Derek qualified second at MIS, and Derek Cope holding, and we got a crash. It's Bobby Hillen and Sterling Marlin.
And it appears as if Hillen has made contact with the tire barrier. Marlin is able to get back onto the racetrack, but Bobby Hillen has damaged the left front of his race car in a collision with the tire wall. So another caution flag comes out, our third of the afternoon, and perhaps we can catch at least the tail end of this crash, and there is contact being made between the two cars.
It looked like that Sterling Marlin and the Piedmont Olds had looped it, and Bobby Hillen was right behind and had nowhere to go and had to steer to the left side of Sterling. He got into the grass, which, remember, is very wet because of the rains we've had the last 2 days, and probably slid right over into the tire wall.
Jeff Bodine, Darrell Waltrip, and others are in for another stop. As you can see, Harry Gant pulling back onto the racetrack. The yellow flag comes out on lap number 26, our third of the day, and they are continuing to work on the left side of that race car on Jeff Bodine, and there is the badly damaged race car of Bobby Hillen Jr. after its collision with the tire barrier.
Talk about toe-in causing damage to the front tires. Bobby Hillen Jr. is experiencing the extreme.
And Bodine goes back out onto the racetrack. Right behind him is Darrell Waltrip, so this caution period is going to juggle the standings once again, as some came in for a stop and some did not.
Bill Elliott, as we have been watching Darrell there in the tied Chevy number 17, and Jeff, Bill Elliott has pulled back onto the racetrack. Of course, he is several laps down, but very much in the thick of it for the points for 1987. It appears to be in the thick of it for second to Earnhardt, but we do have more than 10 races to go.
There are 19 cars being shown in the lead lap at this point, and they're being led by Rusty Wallace with Terry Labonte running in second position. And Hillen limps into the pit area. Let's go to Dick Berggren.
They've got real problems here on Bobby Hillen's car. The front end of this thing is really torn up. The crew has just not even touched the car. They've sort of sent him around. He's going to have to go behind the wall. They've really got a lot of work to do to make this thing a race car again. It's very badly bent.
So Bobby Hillen will go behind the wall, and they'll try to do some repairs on his car. Bobby started this race in 17th position. Last year here at Watkins Glen, he finished in 28th spot. And his best finish on a road course was at Riverside, 6th in the Winston Western 500 last year. And there is a very dejected Neil Bonnet walking to the pit area. He's abandoned his race car that he had to pull off the course, and Neil Bonnet makes the slow walk back to the pit area. He was leading when it happened, but it's all over for Neil Bonnet. And there is Benny Parsons. He appears to be out for a Monday morning, early afternoon drive, as Benny is still in this race and right behind the Richard Petty machine. We'll be back with more of our coverage at the Budweiser at Watkins Glen because of what appeared to be a blown engine by Neil Bonnet. And in the meantime, Sterling Marlin, the Piedmont Oldsmobile, has come in for some work on that machine. He is behind the wall.
Bob, a comment about road course racing. You and I have been privileged to see a lot of road course races in the last couple of seasons, and I'll tell you, this is outstanding road course racing.
And Jerry Punch is standing by on pit road.
Well, Sterling Marlin is still inside the Piedmont Airlines underalls Olds, and Sterling, problem, what happened?
It looks like the seal or something come out of the transmission and it's leaking oil everywhere and it's all over the clutch. And the car's running real good. I just bided my time, and Richard drove in the corner about a mile over his head down there and spun me out. So it didn't hurt nothing, but, you know, it cost a little time. But, you know, the transmission all looks like it might put aside the race.
Well, Sterling Marlin's crew trying to get the car back out. Richard, he's talking about Richard Petty. They came together. There is some damage to the right side of this Oldsmobile. Also, Petty's car has some left side damage.
Well, perhaps the numbers are resulting in this bad luck for Sterling Marlin. He's 13th in the point standings going into this race, and he started the event in 13th position. Green flag, lap 29. The race resumes, and Rusty Wallace is leading. That's Morgan Shepherd on the inside trying to move up, passing Dave Marcus, and indeed Morgan Shepherd has fourth. And now some contact between Shepherd and Derek Cope.
Yeah, Derek, Bob, remember he qualified second at the Michigan International Speedway, and he is up in the top 5 right now. He is racing for position, so all is proper. They're in the Cope camp right now, Derek Cope.
But look who's racing with him. It's Dave Marcus, who has been rather a silent giant this year in Winston Cup racing, having run very well in many, many races. And there is Kyle Petty, who is moving up in the field as he is putting Marcus back another spot.
And Rick Wilson is in that batch of cars. You see the Kodak 4, the 4 Oldsmobile. Rick Wilson, who says, I want to do well at the Glen because I want to show everybody that I can run it more than just Daytona and Talladega, where he is an acknowledged strong runner.
And, of course, Dale Earnhardt is also running with this pack of cars. They go into the corner 2 abreast. Kyle Petty leads the bunch with Marcus second, and then Tim Richmond. Look at the scramble for position as everybody tries to get in the best line, and some real close competition there between Richmond and Dave Marcus.
Outstanding competition. I mentioned just before we went down to Jerry to talk to Sterling, this was good stuff on a road course, and these guys are making me prove to be telling the truth.
Boy, Marcus is just not giving an inch. He's got that car position on the inside of the racetrack and saying, nobody's going to push me out of the way. I'm in the hunt for the lead here. Now Tim Richmond is able to pass him, and Dale Earnhardt is behind Dave Marcus. Here come the leaders, meanwhile. Down the backstretch, it's still Rusty Wallace, followed by Terry Labonte, then Morgan Shepherd, Kyle Petty, Tim Richmond, Dave Marcus, Dale Earnhardt, Rick Wilson, Bobby Allison, and Kyle Petty, and rather Richard Petty.
Yeah, Dale Earnhardt sashaying a little bit as he went into turn number 1, but brought it back comfortably. Morgan Shepherd by having a good day. Morgan's had a good weekend. Another one of those people who seems to have been knocking at the door on a number of occasions this year. And I can guarantee you in conversations with their new crew chief, their new general manager, I should say, Bob DeVore, and Larry McReynolds, crew chief, and Morgan, they are not exactly biding their time, but they're holding back just a little bit. It's not 10-10 racing yet for Morgan. They want to get halfway and then head for the win.
Rick Wilson is in the yellow number 4 Kodak machine, as he too is in this line of cars that are battling for position coming into corner number 1 again. Ahead of Rick Wilson is the number 21 of Kyle Petty and Tim Richmond.
The crews are coming out of turn 1. There's turn 2 right underneath you. There is Richard. Just to put the turn 1, turn 2 in perspective just a little bit, you can see him coming up to the S's. This is turn 3, 4, and 5. You go downhill coming out of turn 1. The camera doesn't show you how abrupt the angle is when you're in the race car. And the next time the cars come around turn number 1, think that not only are they making a 90-degree turn, but they're taking a roller coaster drop down toward turn 2. They're making it look easy. It's not an easy place to get around.
30 laps have been completed. There is quite an elevation change in that end of the race course. Now look at Dale Earnhardt move to the inside, trying to pass Kyle Petty, and he does it easily.
At the backstretch, here is turn number 6. This is old turn number 10 on the Formula 1 Watkins Glen road course. This is turn number 7 now, the traditional turn number 11. Extra home, they'll go underneath the bridge. You see the Winston Cup Series bridge underneath Harold Kinder and completing another lap. Front stretch right here, the pit straightaway, and into that 90-degree turn number 1 again, downhill.
So Earnhardt is 5th, Kyle Petty back in 6th, and Dave Marcus 7th, Rick Wilson, Bobby Allison is 9th, and Richard Petty in 10th position. When you talk about road course wins, you got to mention Bobby Allison because he has more road course wins than any other active driver. However, he has not won on a road course since 1981. His road course victories began back in 1971. He won at Riverside in 71, 73, 75, 79, and 2 in 81. So he has 6 victories on the road course, but none since the 1981 season.
Bobby Allison with those 6 career road course wins leads Richard Petty, and and Darrell Waltrip, who we mentioned earlier, who are tied for second with the most road course wins among the actives. There is Benny trailing King Richard. Speaking of Richard Petty, they have won 5 times, and in 4th is Tim Richmond. The young Charger who's come up so strong the last 3 or 4 seasons. He has won 4 times on a road course, and he currently is ranked 4th among all the active drivers.
And the Hardee's race cam showing us pictures from inside Benny Parsons' machine as he is right behind now Richard Petty in the STP Pontiac. You can see Benny reaching up to the gear shift and moving through the gears. And now Petty moving alongside. And we have some rain that is beginning to fall on the windshield of that car and on the window protecting our broadcast booth here. It is certainly not a hard rain, but a few sprinkles are being felt in the racetrack area once again.
And at 175 miles an hour, even a light sprinkle feels like a downpour.
That's Bobby Allison right ahead of Benny Parsons.
Benny Parsons is just downshifted after the long backstretch. He now looks toward turn 6, turn 7, the last 2.
That's turn 6, now headed for turn 7. Now under the bridge, completing another lap.
Petty into the curb hard. Petty sideways and then bounced off the right-hand side or inside curve there on turn 7.
33 laps have been completed. Halfway is 45. It's a 90-lap race, but if they reach lap number 45 and it continues to rain and rain harder, we could have a shortened event. Let's hope not.
A week ago at Road Atlanta in a Busch Grand National race, Eddie Moise was leading in similar circumstances. The rain began to fall down hard. Patty slipped off the track, and after she slipped off, they dropped the checkered flag, and Morgan Shepherd was declared winner there in the Busch Grand National race.
Here goes Richard Petty once again to the inside of Rick Wilson as they come down the straightaway. And that is Bobby Allison right behind Richard Petty, and both of them get around Rick Wilson. Let's go to the pit area once again.
Well, Bob, we can feel a little tiny bit of rain down here, but it's really not enough to affect the way the cars handle on the speedway. The ground is still absolutely clean, absolutely dry, and in fact, the area from which the weather has been coming all day shows that we are getting some improvement. It looks a little bit better down there than it did about 20 minutes ago. So, best guess is the rain is probably going to hold off for a while anyway.
Yeah, I really can't think that we're going to get a rain strong enough or hard enough. Oh, Rick Wilson gets way out of shape, and Benny Parsons takes advantage. Nice shot from the Hardee's car cam, and Rick Wilson just getting a little bit sideways, and that was enough for Benny to pass. And here comes Derek Cope in 19, and he's challenging Benny on the right side. And Cope spins.
Derek Cope spins going into turn number 1. He thought he had a shot there. Benny, of course, getting just about a half step behind when he had to get out of the throttle when Rick spun. He got by Rick, and Derek Cope tried to take advantage, and he just didn't have enough room going into turn number 1.
So the Californian gets the car straightened around again. Derek, of course, from the Winston West circuit out on the West Coast, spinning in turn number 1, getting the car righted again, though, and back in the race.
Bob, we might talk a little bit about the Winston West circuit. There's smoke coming from the back of Ricky Rudd's car. Oh, heavy-duty stuff.
He was shown in 11th, by the way, Larry.
The Winston West drivers have annual experience and have had for the last decade running a road course. They've run at Riverside many times, so someone like Derek probably has more experience than most of the Winston Cup regulars.
Steve Crispin in car number 62, you can see getting off course and sliding around in the wet grass, finally getting back on course. Steve Crispin, a contender for Rookie of the Year honors in 1987, although at this point, of course, Davey Allison is well ahead in points in the race for the Rookie of the Year. And there is Rusty Wallace still showing the way, broad sliding and dirt tracking that Pontiac around this road course, remaining in the lead.
Well, he really is wrestling it, isn't he? And here is from outside, Derek Cope trying to get underneath Benny. Benny shoots down for the line. There's slight contact, perhaps. It's difficult to tell even from the in-car camera whether or not there was contact, but Derek had to change his line or get on the brakes or something as the road narrowed, and Derek ended up sitting sideways.
In any case, Derek lost quite a few positions, but is able to continue in competition. And there is Rick Wilson, the number 4 car. Now, perhaps that was the reason why Rick got a little out of shape as we were watching from Benny Parsons' car. A flat tire has caused Rick to come in for a new one, and he goes back out there in competition.
One more comment about Cope, by the way. And Ricky Rudd has spun off. Ricky Rudd, who we saw smoke falling from underneath about 5 minutes ago, has spun off course.
Ricky Rudd, and perhaps we can see better what happened. He was running alongside Jeff Bodine, and the rear end comes around.
Well, I think there was some contact there as Ricky Rudd tried to preserve his line. As Jeff moved up the challenge, Ricky Rudd getting the short end of that stick. One last comment, by the way, about Cope. He qualified 25th and was running well in the top 5.
The Budweiser at the Glen at Watkins Glen, New York is 36 laps old, and the leader is Rusty Wallace. Following in second position is Terry Labonte. Third is the 26 car of Morgan Shepherd, then Tim Richmond, and Dale Earnhardt is being shown in that 5th spot. And there is the battle for second. Morgan Shepherd in the green 26 is right on the back bumper of Terry Labonte in the Budweiser Chevrolet number 11. And they are quite a few feet and yards on the racetrack behind the leader, who is Rusty Wallace. And we'll be back with more of our coverage from Winston Cup race continues. We've had a shuffling of positions since we went away involving that car, number 11, Terry Labonte, and an incident he had with Morgan Shepherd.
Now watch Shepherd on the left of your screen. He's a little loose as he goes to the inside. He slides out of control. He gets into Terry Labonte. They're both digging, trying to save it. The cars come around. Morgan Shepherd gets into Labonte. They both get into the soft grass, but Terry got away, losing only 4 or 5 positions.
Go to Dick Bergeron.
Well, right now, Morgan Shepherd is in the pit receiving service on his automobile. They pulled the fender out from the left front tire. There was a lot of smoke from that area when he came in. This is a reasonably long pit stop, but there he goes. He's going to go back out on the speedway and try again.
Well, there's a lot of missing paint there on the left side of that car, but he's back out in competition. Morgan Shepherd was battling Terry Labonte for the 2nd spot when the incident occurred, and there's the damage on the left side. There is the incident where the area where the incident occurred, and it may be just a little wet right there.
Very interesting. Yeah, there's obviously a lot of spring water underneath Watkins Glen. We're in the hilly Finger Lakes region. Now watch where the wet spot is. Watch where the car breaks loose.
No.
He seems to have it gathered back up, perhaps, then he hits the wet spot.
Well, I think it was a little out of control, though, before he hit it, and really did a nice job of gathering it in before the spin with Terry Labonte, sort of a synchronized spin there. And really, Terry Labonte did not lose a whole lot of positions in that incident, but Morgan stalled and sat there for quite a while. As a matter of fact, Terry only lost 2 spots. He was second. He's now back to 4th. There is the leader, meanwhile, Rusty Wallace on lap 40.
Barry Dodson and the entire Kodiak crew, they've had a difficult year, not because they have not been running up front, but because they considered themselves as early as March as someone with a real good chance for winning the Winston Cup, but it hasn't worked out that way this year. Rusty says that we are a team of men all around the age of 30. There are no heroes on the team. We're just working together, trying to pull together, and they've been working very hard, and I'm very confident that they have made team owner Raymond Beadle very pleased.
There is the Kenny Bernstein-owned machine driven by Morgan Shepherd, who has come in again for change of rubber on the left side. Dick?
Well, this is a continuation, Bob, of the problem that he had come in for just a lap or so earlier. Ordinarily, when they have damage like this, they don't try to fix it all in one time. If they do that, they might lose a lap. So what he's doing is he's going to make a series of stops. This is the second. If they're lucky, this will do it. But when a car is badly damaged, they ordinarily come in several times rather than coming in once for extended service. Morgan now is done, and he's going to leave the pit area.
While we were watching the Morgan Shepherd Terry Labonte sachet on the course, the King, Richard Petty, in scheduled spot.
The STP Pontiac is now back on the course, but he had a right rear tire going down. They came in, changed all 4 tires, and the good thing about a road course, you don't lose a lap. It takes so long to get around. So Petty back on the course, but he lost a lot of time.
And there is King Richard in the STP Pontiac, resuming the competition out there after having made that pit stop. Now, by the way, the interval between first and second position as we continue to watch Richard Petty is almost 11 seconds. That's how much of a lead Rusty Wallace has on Tim Richmond, who's now in second. There is Rusty, continuing to run very smoothly in that Kodiak Pontiac, the number 27 car. He has certainly been the strongest car on the racetrack all afternoon long. He has not led every lap by any means, but he has been, without question, the fastest car since the drop of the green flag. Again, about an 11-second lead now on second place, Tim Richmond. And when you're driving the Watkins Glen Road Course, you not only have to worry about going fast, but you have to worry about conserving the automobile.
When it comes to qualifying and everything, you got to drive her hard. But during the race, we'll try to stay on the racetrack and keep the downshifts and upshifts in synchronization. You know, don't screw up there. Don't over-rev the motor too much, which happens an awful lot. And from there on, you know, it's just a driver's game. The crew's done all they could possibly do, and you got to do the rest.
Rusty Wallace is looking for his 3rd Winston Cup victory. The most recent was at Martinsville in September of '86, and then, of course, he won on ESPN at Bristol Raceway. And Jeff Bodine is in the pit area once again. Jerry?
Well, problems continue for the Chemung native. Jeff Bodine has the Chevrolet back down pit road. You saw earlier they had trouble, contact with the wall, and they bent their front suspension. Now they have a flat tire. A tire possibly going down. The front of the car is spin in severely. The right side of the car is scraped. They will change all 4 tires. As Jeff Bodine still sits on pit road, he will not lose a lap, but he'll lose a lot of time as they continue to work on the Levi Garrett Chevrolet. Let's go up to Nick Berggren.
And I'm with Harry Hyde up pit road. Harry, your car seems to be running very well. Are you running strong enough to win the race?
At this point, Rusty's got a pretty good lead on her. I think probably if after another pit stop, we'll be a lot stronger. We're going to make some changes that should close the gap up.
That's Harry Hyde. He is crew chief for Tim Richmond.
The defending champion of the race, Tim Richmond, at the moment lies in second position, about 11 seconds behind Rusty Wallace. There is Tim in the number 25 Folgers machine.
With all the scrambling we've had going on, the standings have changed significantly. Bodine gave up 7th position, by the way, when he came in. Earnhardt is 3rd. Terry Labonte has recovered to 4th, and Kyle Petty is running in 5th. Dave Marcus is in 6th position. We mentioned that Bodine had given up 7th. Bobby Allison is running in 8th. Benny Parsons is in 9th, and Darrell Waltrip 10th. Phil Parsons 11th, and the number 7 car of Alan Kowicki was being shown in 12th position at the lap 41 mark.
This is only the 7th race of the season for Tim Richmond. He's won 2 of them. Meanwhile, back up front, we check on the progress of Rusty Wallace. He continues to lead, running very smoothly. He's got Jeff Bodine just ahead of him, so Jeff is that close to losing a lap. And, of course, Jeff was the driver that Rusty Wallace battled for in the early stages of this race for the lead. There is Harry Gant moving to the inside in the Skull Bandit.
Harry Gant going around Rick Knoop. Rick Knoop, of course, with a great deal of experience on road courses. Most of them in a Porsche IMSA car, a GTP car, out of the stable in Laguna Beach Hills, California. Rick Knoop running this weekend for the number 16.
Carolina. There's Rusty Wallace coming out of the corner, and again, Jeff Bodine is right ahead of him. The lead has now moved up to 12.5 seconds for Rusty Wallace. He continues to lengthen his lead over Tim Richmond. There's the Levi Garrett car driven by Jeff Bodine. Has been in the pit area many times for repairs. We understand he was losing a right front tire. He came in to have that repaired. Still has, however, problems in the front end of that machine after an incident early in the race with Rusty Wallace and the guardrail.
There have been 7 different winners in 1987 so far, and one of them has not been Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace has really positioned himself to win here today. Rusty Wallace has shown a great deal of dominance, and they must be right now standing in the pits with fingers crossed.
Right now, looking very good for his third Winston Cup race, although we are just at the halfway point at this moment. 45 laps. Pace is being set by Rusty Wallace, about a 13-second advantage over second place Tim Richmond, as Rusty has been almost to the point of dominance here in the first half of this race. Now let's go to the Napa mid-race recap. The leader at the halfway point, Rusty Wallace, he had led all but 20 laps, and the margin at that time was about 11. It's now up to about 13 seconds. We had 21 cars on the lead lap, 4 leaders and 4 lead changes. We had been under caution for 3 periods for a total of 9 laps. Out of the race, the number 76 car of Phil Good, number 1 Chuck Schrodel, and the 75 car of Neil Bonnet. All of those machines out of competition. Meanwhile, on pit road, it is Dale Earnhardt who has come in for another stop under green, but quick work on the Wrangler Chevrolet, and he moves back out onto the racetrack. And a car has spun. That's 81 of Tom Rutzel.
Coming out of turn number 7, you can see exiting the pit. A lot of confusion going on. That was Derek Cope pouring out there. He's been about a half a lap in the pit, getting what appeared to be routine maintenance. Tom Rotzel is back on the throttle.
Rotzel in the Learn Ford Shilton AMC Ford, qualifying at 109 miles an hour and starting the race in 35th position as Rusty Wallace continues to weave his way through the slower cars on the racetrack, passing the 52 car of Jimmy Dean.
Rusty Wallace's best finish in 1987 so far has been a second on the short track at Martinsville. He was third at Richmond and also third at Atlanta. He's had several top 5 runs that have been thwarted by mostly engine failure problems, engine failure related problems, but this is by far Rusty's best performance this far along in the race, as Benny Parsons has pulled into the pit area.
And we get a perspective from Benny's point of view as the windshield is cleaned on the car. There's Benny talking with the crew on the radio. Here's Dick.
This is a relatively routine stop. They put 2 left side tires on the car. Henry Benfield has loaded up the gas tank with a couple of cans, and Benny is gone. A lot of cars have been coming in, and pit crews up and down pit road have been active as if they think that their cars need some fuel, so we may well see some more pit stops in the next 2 laps.
From the Hardee's race cam, we watch Benny Parsons move out of the pit lane and onto the racetrack once again.
Benny Parsons executed 27 laps between pit stops. That seems to be a relatively repetitive pattern among many of the top runners, somewhere between 25 and 30 laps here. A little less probably than they're capable of going, but by going right and left, making right and left-handed turns, there is the damage that we saw Buddy Baker's car experience a little earlier. You don't get quite the same mileage, certainly not the extreme of it, as you do when you're on a high bank, and you can set your fuel cell to accommodate every drop that's in there. Of course, you run out on a high bank, you can always coast around. You can't do that on a road course.
And 3 of Best Press Racing down the straightaway. That's Darrell Waltrip along with Bobby Allison and Phil Parsons, as Allison has the spot there with Darrell Waltrip and Phil Parsons falling in behind.
And in the back of that group is Alan Kowicki. Now, we had a report about 10 minutes ago that Alan Kowicki was in the top 12, and if so, he's having a good ride. This would easily be Alan's most outstanding performance on a road course. There's Waltrip. Hard to miss that car. Phil Parsons is stalking. Bobby Alice continues to run in front. You can see Kowicki right behind him. Michael Waltrip on the left of your screen. Michael is running in front of many of those other cars around him, but behind this trio right here of Allison and Darrell Waltrip and Phil Parsons.
By the way, that is the battle for 6th position. Allison in 6th, followed by Darrell Waltrip and then Phil Parsons. 6th, 7th, and 8th on the racetrack. By the way, we'll update you on the position that Benny Parsons is running in. He's in 12th spot after having made that pit stop. But Rusty Wallace is the man to beat at this point, and he is gaining a half second a lap every time he circles this 2.4-mile racetrack, and Bobby Allison comes into the pit for a stop.
Bobby Allison heading pit side to be serviced by Jimmy Finnegan crew. Began this race in 21st position. Of course, he had that spectacular win at the Firecracker 4th of July weekend when Kenny Schrader crashed and flipped. Jerry Bunch is there.
Routine pit stop for the leader of the Alabama gang. Bobby Allison has the Miller Buick on pit road. Left side tires are already on the car. Green flag stop. This is a scheduled stop for Allison. A little about 5 or 6 laps earlier than they had hoped to come in. And the stop a few minutes ago for Earnhardt, likewise. The scheduled stop a lot earlier than they wanted to come in. They just weren't getting the fuel mileage they wanted to. In fact, Earnhardt may have to come back in again, whereas Rusty Wallace, who should pit within 4 or 5 laps, may only be able to go the rest of the way with this final pit stop.
Very interesting, as we may be seeing what amounts to the final pit stop of the afternoon. 50 laps been completed, 40 more to go, and Davey Allison comes in for a stop. Now, Davey, not particularly accustomed to the road courses, began in 33rd position, but the real story involving Davey Allison this weekend was the story about the crash of his hauler. It was coming down a long hill here just outside of Watkins Glen when the brakes went out of it, and the hauler crashed into a cement barrier to avoid hitting some other cars and some people. And there were a couple of injuries sustained by the crew members on the Davey Allison team, but no serious injuries. And Davey had to overcome that problem before qualifying and practicing for the race.
This is his first time ever in a Winston Cup car on a road course, and their plans were to come here to just do a lot of learning anyway this weekend. But as you pointed out, that's just the fuel filler, the overfull that is just filling out. No problem there. You saw it on Bobby Allison's car too when he exited. They never anticipated the Davey Allison, Joey Knuckles crew, Harry Verneer's car, as tough a weekend as they have. But there fortunately were no serious injuries. Matter of fact, one of the people who wasn't even sure if he could perform his normal pit side duties in this race this weekend, now watching over to Monday, was Joey Knuckles.
Dale Earnhardt going around Davey Allison on the outside. As Davey having a little bit of trouble getting back up to speed in that car. Certainly a super speedway specialist, as Davey has won already on the Winston Cup Series this year, as Kyle Petty comes in for a quick stop in the Citgo Wood Brothers prepared Ford.
Kyle Petty has gone 31 laps between pit stops. We've had a 25-lap Skane and a 29, and now a 31. Kyle is 5th in points. He has finished 16 of the 17 races run this year, including that spectacular win at Charlotte in the longest race of the year, the 600-miler.
And he is 5th in the point standings. The Wood Brothers have completed the pit stop, and Kyle Petty begins to pick up speed once again.
Kyle is easily having his best year as a Winston Cup racer. Over the past 4 or 5 years, every one of these years is going to pop up, and Kyle was going to be in a position where we would say, well, he's arrived. In 1987, he has definitely arrived. It's interesting, Kyle's life has become more complex this year than ever before, but yet his racing career has also been more successful.
We're watching Tim Richmond because we anticipate a pit stop, and indeed, here he comes, swinging to the right side of the racetrack off of turn 7. He's headed for the pits. Let's go to pit road.
And Richmond's going to take service. Again, the tires on the left side are the ones that get changed here because you're usually taking right-hand turns, so it's the left side tires that take the most abuse. One tin can goes flying out of the back of the car as they've got one can of fuel in it. There's some damage on the right-hand corner, very minor. And whoa, there goes Richmond. Good, fast pit stop. Jerry Punch, what's going on down at your end?
Well, they're getting ready to pit Rusty Wallace here in the Kodiak Pontiac. You know, Wallace came in and pitted on lap 20. They are supposed to bring him in on lap 56. That means he will have gone 36 laps under green. If they do pit on 56, they'll have 34 laps to go to the checkered flag. There'll be no problem.
A lot of smoke coming from the 63 machine of Jocko Machacomo, the Lenro Motorsports Chevrolet. He has that car to the inside of the racetrack and is slowing. This could bring out a caution flag if the car can't make it. It does indeed. Harold Kinder displays the yellow, and what a break for Rusty Wallace, indeed.
Wow.
Rusty comes in right now for a stop. Let's go once again to Jerry Punch.
The Kodiak crew going to work on the Rusty Wallace machine, cleaning the windshield. They have the left side of the car on the jacks, and will change left side tires. Barry Dodson, Jimmy Maycar, Brad Parrott and the crew going to work on the car. Left side tires. Now around comes the jacks to change the right side tires. The lead car. They want to win here so bad. They were the hot car last year and had trouble. They're now some 37 laps away from victory. They should be able to go the rest of the way on field, but it's going to be awfully close. The car off the jack, down and away.
Well, one advantage that Rusty had, in addition to the fact that the yellow came out, was nobody was pitting around him. The crew had a lot of room to work out there, and that was one reason why he got in and out so quickly. And here's Terry Labonte also getting service on pit road as they're changing the rubber on the left side of that car and now moving around to the right side.
I agree very much with Jerry's analysis about the fuel mileage. We are right at the edge. If this race continues to go green, there's Dale Earnhardt now coming in for a stop. If this race goes the rest of the way green, it could be close for some of these people.
I think it's going to depend on how long this caution period lasts. If it goes for 2 or 3 laps, he's going to have a very definite advantage. We're still waiting on the Richard Childress crew to make completion of this pit stop as Dale Earnhardt sits and waits for the rubber to be changed on the right side. There he goes, back out onto the race course.
I'll tell you what we set up with 52 laps complete. This is exactly the lap we were talking about when the race began. We felt that this was the outside window. There is Phil Parsons in the Skoal Classic Oldsmobile getting service. This was exactly the lap we had talked about at the beginning of the race. This appears to be the outside window to go the distance. What we have set up here, if this race goes the rest of the distance under green flag, is a dramatic finish. There may well be 2, 3, or 4 cars that cannot go from here to the finish.
And again, we are under yellow, so they're conserving fuel at the moment as Phil Parsons and Ricky Rudd have both come out onto the racetrack. By the way, before we went to the caution flag, Rusty Wallace was turning laps of around 113 miles an hour. Glen, which is being brought to you by Budweiser. It remains out. However, next time around, they will be getting the green once again. Rusty Wallace is lined up behind Rick Knoop. Knoop, the first machine back of the pace car, but Rusty certainly gained an advantage on that set of pit stops. Let's try to reach Rusty once again by in-car radio.
Rusty, this is Larry Nuber up at ESPN. We know this is the last lap before green. Do you think you can go the distance from here on the fuel that you now have?
I don't know, Larry. I just asked the crew that question. They'll answer me a little later on here, but I hope so. You know, if the thing goes green and I can run like I did before, I'll probably be in good shape, but the race is starting to shape up to come down to the end now, and these guys are going to be dogging the heck out of me, so I'm going to have to run a conservative race and see what happens here.
Yeah, this is the first time that you've seen Richmond and Labonte for about a half hour. Do you think that they have a shot at you?
Yeah, they got a shot. There's a lot of guys that got a shot. I just hope that the way this car's running, they'll stay running like this. It's been running real good.
We are assuming that as well as you have been running on your last stop, you made no changes. Still the same setup since the start of the race.
That's right, Larry. I can't figure out why we need to mess with a good thing, and right now everything's just fine.
Okay, Rusty, we'll let you concentrate a little bit here on the last half a lap because we know this green start will be a critical one.
Thank you very much, sir.
We also have radio in the Bobby Allison car. We'll see if we can contact him and see how his race is progressing.
Bobby, this is Larry Nuber up at ESPN. Do you have a reading on us?
Sure, Larry.
Well, Bobby, you've been very competitive today. You've certainly been a threat for the top 5. Have you made any changes in your machine? Do you think that you can give Wallace and Richmond and Labonte a race?
We've adjusted on the chassis a little bit, but we still seem to be lacking just a little bit. We just have to keep running and see how we can do.
Bobby, about a half hour ago, it appeared to be misting very lightly. Did the track ever get slippery?
No, I did not notice any slipperiness.
Okay, Bobby, we know you're getting ready to go green. Good luck to you.
15 cars in the lead lap as we are about to go back to racing condition. The number 88 car, Buddy Baker, is the last car on the lead lap. Well, let's go to Dick once again for a quick comment from the pit area.
Well, Bob, I just talked to Harry Hyde, and I asked him if he thought he had enough fuel to go all the way, and Harry looked me square in the eye, and he says, no, and nobody else better have enough either.
Interesting.
But you got to consider that Richmond did pit, though, before Wallace, so...
Yeah, but it was only one lap, Bob,
yeah,
so I don't think
true.
that's a real problem. But one of the key things we need to bear in mind here is that a road course does use a lot more fuel than a super speedway or even a short track. All of these cars... Oh, we got a green flag coming up right now. Green flag.
And look at Tim Richmond challenge Rusty Wallace as they head for the first turn. Wallace has got the line, though. You want to be to the inside going in turn number 1, and Rusty hangs on. Richmond falls to second in a crash involving Patty Moise.
Looks like Steve Chrisman is also involved. There was a third car. There are at least 3 of them. It's coming out of turn number 7, the very final turn on this course. Yellow out immediately. There is Patty Moise's car with extensive damage.
Looks like she has damage in both the front end and the rear end of that car. And Jimmy Means is also sliding off course in another section of the racetrack. So all kinds of things going on here at the restart. But Patty Moise suffered some extensive damage on that butter-flavored Crisco machine. Means, meanwhile, has gotten his car righted and pulls back out onto the racetrack as the crew goes to work on Patty's car. Dick?
It's a bit more than cosmetic damage here, Bob, for sure. Right now they're doing more looking than actually working. They just removed the back bumper from the car. Patty Moise has shut off the engine. She is taking her gloves off. This is not a good sign. She's getting ready to unbuckle her helmet. It looks like her day is done.
And once again, this plays into the strategy of this race because we go back to yellow and the fuel conservation now continues. They race to the stripe and Tim Richmond has the lead. So Richmond has passed Rusty Wallace, and when we go back to a green situation, it will be Tim leading unless they choose to come in for another splash of fuel here in the next couple of laps. Is that possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but it depends so much on their fuel mileage. And as Dick mentioned, it's not nearly as a predictable situation what your mileage is on a road course as it is on a super speedway. So for those who think they have a good track on their fuel mileage, you might see them come in thinking, well, we've just shortened the distance that we have to run by 2 laps. Hey, we can go 35 laps. We'll come in. So we'll see some of the strategy begin to unfold and what some of the crews think about their mileage as they come around the next time.
Well, you're looking at the mangled front end of the Schrader car, Kenny Schrader's Red Baron Ford. He was involved in that crash up in turn 6 on the road course with Patty Moise in the front of the car, damaged heavily. The radiator shoved back in. Bob Johnson, Junie Dunleavy, and the crew are trying to get the radiator out and replace it so they can get him back on. Possibly maybe just some belts replaced now as the radiator seems to be holding water okay. So trouble for Kenny Schrader.
So 2 cars that were involved in that incident just before they crossed the start-finish line. Ken Schrader and Patty Moise have come in for repairs. Moise is back out on the racetrack, but Kenny Schrader remains on pit road. The yellow out once again at Watkins Glen Raceway as we continue to clean up debris in turn number 7 because of an accident up there involving Steve Chrisman, Patty Moise, and Ken Schrader. We should be going green in just a couple of more laps, however. The field is slowed right now, but when they get back up to speed, the drivers will be experiencing what we refer to as G-forces and G-load. Well, what does it do to a driver? How does it affect his driving ability? Here is Dick Berggren.
This is a G analyst. It measures acceleration, cornering, and braking effort. Here, engineer Doug Gore installed a G analyst into Benny Parsons' Winston Cup race car, where Benny will take us for a ride around the speedway. Handling reads out in G's, the force of gravity. To give you an idea of 1 G, the best roller coasters corner at about 1 G. The display markers to the right or left of center indicate cornering forces. They fill to the right with hard right cornering. Now here's Benny Parsons going through the first turn. He's showing 1.4 G's of cornering. A good street car will corner at about 0.3 G's. So Benny took the turn with about 5 times the cornering force of a street car. Acceleration data shows Benny able to power out of the turns at over 0.45 G's. When you hit passing gear on the highway with your street car to pass a slower automobile, you'd be lucky to feel 0.15 G's, about 1/3 the acceleration of Benny's race car. The G analyst showed Benny generally doesn't brake any harder in his race car than you do in a panic stop, about 0.8 G's, even though he has much better brakes. Benny has to save his brakes for the race. He does, however, get on the brakes early, and he stays on them late. The G analyst can be conveniently mounted in either a race car or a street car. It's a device that helps teams set up their race cars to corner better, and it's an excellent help in testing. It's also a big help in improving driver skills.
So a little bit of information there on G forces as we are inside Benny's car now. Well, ESPN is the exclusive cable home of the National Football League. We'll have several regular season games, NFL, here on ESPN. Now, you can see to the left of your screen, several teams are coming in and making some pit stops here for some final fuel to go the remaining 31 laps that we have to go in this race. But the leaders, at least those running up toward the front of the pack, have not pitted, including Tim Richmond, Rusty Wallace, and Terry Labonte. They've stayed out there and apparently think they can go the rest of the way without another pit stop. We'll be back with more from Watkins Glen, New York, right after the break. A little over 30 laps to go. Next time by, they will be receiving the green flag. You can see the lights on top of the pace car are out. That signifies the drivers behind the pace car that when they come through turn number 7, get ready to stand on the accelerator because racing is going to resume. Now, Tim Richmond beat Rusty Wallace back to the starting line when we had that caution flag come out, and it's going to be interesting to see now what Rusty does on the restart if his car indeed has the horsepower and the handling ability to pass Tim Richmond and go into the lead once again. Before we went to the caution, during race conditions, Rusty was pulling away from everybody at the rate of about a half second a lap and turning laps at around 113 miles an hour. Let's see if Rusty can do that again when we go back racing.
But Harry Hyde, Tim Richmond have agreed on some changes. There are some interesting stories there in the top 10. See Dave Marcus going by? He's fourth in line. He's third in this race. Running in 7th in this race is Alan Kowicki. Most of those cars that you see on your screen are up front running in the lead lap. Jeff Bodine has been able to stay on the lead lap. Buddy Baker. You go back up front and give you a real quick rundown before this last round of pit stops. It was number 25 Richmond, 27 Wallace, 71 Dave Marcus, 17 Darrell Waltrip, the number 3 car of Dale Earnhardt. Kyle Petty was up there. Alan Kowicki, whom we mentioned, Phil Parsons, Benny Parsons, Ricky Rudd, Richard Petty, Jeff Bodine, and Buddy Baker.
Field being led between turns number 5 and 6 now. Going through corner number 6. Short straightaway before reaching turn number 7. As the pace car begins to pick up speed just a little bit, he'll be darting to his right and moving off of the racetrack onto pit road as the field now also begins to accelerate, and Harold Kinder displays the green flag with some ominous looking clouds overhead, but still no significant rain during the course of this event. Richmond goes into corner number 1, still with the lead as Darrell Waltrip and Dale Earnhardt battle for 4th spot. Richmond maintains the lead. Wallace second, then Labonte, Marcus, Waltrip, Earnhardt, Kyle Petty, and Alan Kowicki. They come up through the S's.
Okay, for Rusty Wallace, here's the scenario. Coming out of this turn right here, turn 4, and headed toward the long backstretch. If he still has the horsepower, this is where he will catch Tim. He needs to hit turn 4 at the base of the S's just right. He needs to execute turn 7 very well, just before the pit straight. If he's got a chance to pass, there is Dale Earnhardt going to the inside of Darrell Waltrip. He used that long backstretch we were talking about.
Well, let's not count Dale Earnhardt out of this race. The current points leader in Winston Cup has certainly shown that his car is running well. Now, this is what happened when the green dropped. Look at Darrell Waltrip move to the inside of the course and try to block the progress of Earnhardt. Earnhardt moved up high on the track, but as we indicated, the low spot, the inside position, is the one to be in when you enter turn number 1.
And Dave Marcus has held his own. The field flashes past the start-finish line. There is Wallace tucked in behind Richmond. He appears to be a little closer this time than he was on the restart. Does that mean if he hits the S's just right, as we see Ricky Rudd in red moving to the center of the track, that if Wallace hits the S's just right, we'll leave a chance at Richmond down the backstretch?
That's Rudd, Cope, Benny Parsons running there together on the racetrack, but our attention is focused up toward the front. Here comes Rudd, and then Benny Parsons, and then Derek Cope and Jeff Bodine, who remains on the lead lap, but is, I don't think, a threat to win this thing.
Here comes Rusty.
Don't think he's going to have the momentum build up, though, to make a pass on Richmond. He does not, but look how close the first 3 are, and here comes Kyle Petty, passing Darrell Waltrip.
Kyle Petty having another great race, and look at Alan Kowicki. Alan Kowicki is right up there. Remember, he too is on the lead lap, so some great dicing going on here in the final stages, during which we believe everybody can go the distance. But did Richmond
Wallace. Labonte hit late enough to go the rest of the way.
Kyle Petty in the number 21 Sitco sponsored machine prepared by the Wood brothers. He was the winner at Charlotte. Look at Rusty Wallace now again moving to the inside. That's what you want to do, but does he have the horsepower to gain the top spot into turn one? Rusty Wallace takes the lead from Tim Richmond.
Tim Richmond was out of control as he came out of turn number 7, losing some momentum, which allowed Rusty Wallace to get underneath, perhaps allowing Terry Labonte running in third to move past Richmond. Now let's see if Wallace is as strong as he was in the early stages of this race. Tim Richmond appears to be letting it all hang out. Tim Richmond is going for it, but right now he cannot get back around Rusty Wallace.
That is indeed what it looks like Richmond is doing. He's just trying everything. Dirt track in the car, sliding it around, trying to hold on to second position. He's doing it at the moment, keeping Terry Labonte back of him in third, but he's seeing Rusty Wallace move ahead and beginning to stretch out the advantage just a little bit.
Oh, there is Rusty Wallace wrestling her around number 2. Rusty Wallace was trying to hold on, and he was successful. As you can see, this is a live shot, and Rusty Wallace is back in the lead.
And so they are in single file order now as Richmond is in second position, the defending champion of this race, and the driver who has won the most road course races since 1982 is in second. We asked him earlier about the finesse you need to drive this racetrack.
Yeah, if I had to finesse the car, I might as well quit. I mean, you know, I like to finesse them when they're backwards and sideways. You know, when you finesse them, if you can finesse a car and make it look smooth, you're not going fast enough. In my book, if I look smooth, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, Tim Richmond at the moment is not going anywhere, but at the same time, he isn't losing anything. He's holding on to that second position as the skies begin to brighten now, and at least here on the main straightaway where we're positioned, it's about as bright as it has been the last 2 or 3 days here in the central New York region. So I think the threat of this race being shortened by rain is down the tubes at the moment. Our concentration is who's going to last the longest and who's going to last the 90 laps and take home the win. Right now, in position for the victory is Rusty Wallace. Great battle between Dave Marcus and Dale Earnhardt. Marcus to the inside and Earnhardt to the outside. Let's see now as they progress through another section of the race course. It is still Dave Marcus who holds on to that 4th position.
We were talking about the ability to go the distance. Here is a summary of the pit stop. Rusty Wallace changed 4 tires. Of course, everybody got gas. Tim Richmond, only the 2 left side tires. Both Labonte and Marcus, who have been running in the top 4 at that time, changed 4 tires. So everybody got fuel, and only Tim Richmond took on 2 tires. Now, Rusty Wallace stopped at lap number 53, and Tim Richmond stopped at lap 52. I suggest that's cutting it very close. Labonte stopped at lap 53. He, too, cutting it close, as is Earnhardt, stopping at lap 53.
And how does all this, what does it mean for Tim Richmond?
Well, Tim Richmond has got to be careful, and boy, he is really dirt
not being
around.
real careful now.
You know, Dick mentioned that the fuel mileage is not as predictable. Both Dick and Jared said this on a road course. And the other part is, when you're driving like Tim Richmond does, it doesn't burn up excessive amounts of fuel, excessive extra amounts, but it burns up a little more. And if you're right on the edge and driving like that, it might make the difference in the inability to go the distance.
We've got 25 more laps to go. Wallace crosses the stripe. Behind is Tim Richmond, and then Terry Labonte. Dale Earnhardt is next, followed by Dave Marcus, Kyle Petty, Darrell Waltrip, and then Alan Kulwicki. That's the order that they're running in, with 65 out of 90 laps completed. And as you can see, Rusty is beginning to stretch out the advantage on Richmond, Labonte, Earnhardt, and Marcus. 65 out of 90 circuits have been completed. Here comes the field, and the lead being held by Rusty Wallace. There is Tim Richmond running in second position, but beginning to lose a little bit of ground now as Rusty has a lot of open racetrack in front of him.
Dale Earnhardt has won 8 times this year, as everybody knows. Rusty Wallace is driving a Pontiac. All other makes of cars have only won 7 times this year. All other makes combined still
don't exceed or even reach Earnhardt's total. The total of Chevrolet wins, Earnhardt's 8 plus 2 others. There have been 6 Ford wins and 1 Buick win and no Pontiac wins so far in 1987.
Got to be impressed with the performance of Dave Marcus here this weekend. Dave didn't have all that great a starting position. He began in 14th spot, but now is in, I believe, 5th position. Right behind him is Kyle Petty and Darrell Waldrop. But Marcus, as he did at Daytona in the Firecracker 400, is just having a tremendous run. Let's go to the pit area.
Well, it's no surprise Dave Marcus is running as well as it is. A few weeks ago on ESPN at Riverside, California, Marcus had a super run. He had a brand new race car, the same car he has here, only his second race. He was running 3rd at Riverside with 20 laps to go when he cracked the cylinder. He was a contender there, and he felt like he could be a contender here today, yet he might. He's running awfully strong, and the crew down here, Norman Degree and the Lifeboy crew, feel like they may have a shot at it yet.
Well, they could very well indeed. Now, Dave Marcus's last win in Winston Cup competition was right here on ESPN back in February of 1982 at Richmond. But Tim Richmond has spun off course. Second place, Richmond is in turn number 7 trying to get going once again, but he has lost some valuable spots.
We suggested earlier that Tim might have been trying to carry the car. He was really wrestling it through the turns, seemed to be giving it all he was worth, and perhaps that was the result of it, Bob.
So Richmond is no longer in second position. Here's how it occurred. Watch at the top of your screen. Richmond headed backwards in turn 7.
Tim Richmond apparently just sliding off as he went into that final right-hander, although coming at that direction, he was already going backwards before he reached turn number 7. He was apparently exiting the left-handed turn number 6. And by the way, we've had a report that there are clouds above turn number 7 on this 2.4-mile course have darkened significantly, and the winds over there are very good.
Well, just as we mentioned that at least here on the straightaway,
which is where Tim spun with.
That's right. Here on the straightaway, it's about as bright as it has been in the last couple of days, but in other sections of the course, some black clouds are hanging overhead. There is Labonte now second, followed by Earnhardt, then Dave Marcus, then Kyle, Darrell, Alan Kulwicki
still up there.
Yep, and Ricky Rudd right behind him. So those cars are running nose to tail of the racetrack, all battling for position.
You know, Bob, you and I had a chance to talk with Alan in our Speed Week studio on Wednesday of this week, and he wasn't braggadocio about what's going on. He felt that he could be in a better position to perform stronger this weekend here at Watkins Glen than he has in any of the road courses previously, but he wasn't quite certain what to expect. Without question, this is his finest hour, and of course we can turn right and left.
Ricky Rudd looking to the inside of Kulwicki. They're coming down the stretch, but Allen hanging on to that position. This is how close the competition is after 68 laps of 90.
Boy, Rusty is really silencing everyone. I felt confident that the changes that Hyde and Richmond had agreed upon, of course, we were not privy to what they were before their last stop, would have at least made Tim more competitive to Rusty. He got the jump on him at the start, but once Rusty picked up the momentum, it was right back to square one at the start of the race again. Rusty Wallace being faster than everybody else. Dick has an update for us.
Larry, one of the things we've got to bear in mind is that when Tim Richmond took his pit stop, he took on only 2 tires. He took on left side tires. He did that because he took his pit stop under green. Realized that just after he took his pit stop, the yellow flag came out. And Rusty managed to get in here. There's a spin on the racetrack. Spin on the racetrack.
It is Richard Petty, Dick. He's going again, so go ahead with your thought.
Okay, well, my thought was basically that the other guys had the opportunity to come in and change 4 tires. And that's a significant advantage to have 4 new tires versus only 2 new tires. So what's happened to Richmond really had a lot to do with the timing of the yellow flag. Not his team's fault, not the driver's fault. And you can best believe he's going as hard as he can. You can also best believe that if there's another caution flag, Tim Richmond's going to come in here and get some new tires on that car.
And further, Dick, by our observation up here, just as that yellow flag fluttered, as we go back to take a replay of Richard Petty skidding off of turn number 1, making no contact. And as Bob mentioned, that Tim is, or rather that Richard is back under power. Same place as has happened earlier to Buddy Baker, of course, when Tim Richmond spun off, was coming off of turn number 7. Commenting about the yellow flag, when Rusty Wallace saw the yellow flag, he was coming off of turn number 7. He immediately ducked into the pits with very little warning to his crew, but it did enable him to make the pit stop under the yellow flag, as Dick mentioned, and it really helped Rusty in his drive to the front.
It's a 6-second lead for Rusty Wallace, as now he has really opened up the advantage on Terry Labonte. By the way, Tim's spin has placed him back to 12th in the serial scoring. There is Rusty Wallace just looking flawlessly here in the late going of the Budweiser at the Glen. Will this be Winston Cup number 3 for Rusty Wallace? We will know in 20 more laps. We are at Watkins Glen, New York for the Budweiser at the Glen, and Rusty continues to lead. Now with about a 7.5-second lead. He is really stretching it out over Terry Labonte, Dale Earnhardt, Dave Marcus, and Kyle Petty with less than 20 laps to go now. Rusty Wallace is beginning to see the dollar signs. There's the interval between first and second. Rusty has to be thinking now victory. The car running just wonderfully. No problems whatsoever with that car, as Terry Labonte has been relegated to second now after Tim Richmond's spin, and Terry Labonte is fighting desperately to stay in second position over Dale Earnhardt. A very successful road driver is Terry Labonte, and we asked him earlier about his success.
I don't know. I really don't know. I enjoy running on road courses, for one thing. I think a lot of the guys probably don't really like to run on them. I run on them on some road courses other than Winston Cup events, and it's always been a lot of fun, and it's something that I enjoy. And I think when you go into a place in the frame of mind that you like to doing it, you're gonna do it better than somebody that doesn't like to do it.
Comments from Terry Labonte as Wallace is now putting about a second a lap, stretching out the advantage by about a second of the lap. At least that's the way it's been the last 2 laps. He was 6.5, 7.5. This time he's 8.5 seconds ahead.
Labonte, by the way, is the second-ranked driver in terms of poles this year. Bill Elliott has grabbed 6. Terry Labonte has 3, and nobody else has as many as himself and Bill. Davey Allison, by the way, has 2, and 7 others have just 1.
Darrell Waltrip looking inside of Kyle Petty, headed for turn number 1. Petty falls in behind Kyle, however. We can give you the standings through Alan Kowicki, and Alan is right now in 10th spot in that Z-Rex Ford. And Alan running a super speedway car here on the road course.
I think this is Sirloin, isn't it? The car that got all the headlines from a year ago, good old Sirloin. They named it that because they said it was as tough as a sirloin. No insult intended for all you steakhouses out there. But Alan has run this car in just about every type of racetrack except dirt over the past 2 seasons. He has lost significant ground in the last couple of laps while we were listening to Terry Labonte. He's dropped back about 3 or 4 positions, Bob. He had a very good start this season, but he went into a slump following the 5th place at Bristol earlier this year in April, and only his great second place finish at Pocono in July broke that string, where his average finish, by the way, was 27. Zip, comment?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Alan Kulwicki, Larry. You're right, he is driving Sirloin, and that, to me at least, is a truly remarkable phenomenon that he is as far up in this field as he is. Virtually everybody in front of him has a special road race-only car, and he takes his old car that he ran, for almost all the races last year. He'll convert it to run here, and then he'll convert it back, and he'll run Martinsville and Bristol and all the rest of them. But there's one other little hooker in this whole Alan Kulwicki story, and that is that he lost his engine in the car on Saturday night. He cracked a cylinder head. He walked up and down the garage trying to get an engine. Finally, he was able to fire one from Junie Dunleavy. That's Kenny Schrader's car owner. Put the motor in. The very first time he was able to fire the thing up was on pit road here this morning when they said, "Gentlemen, start your engines."
I think what he's saying is that John Young and crew didn't get any sleep last night.
Allen is in 10th. 9th is Jeff Bodine. In 8th is Benny Parsons. 7th, Ricky Rudd. In 6th position is Darrell Waltrip. 5th is Kyle Petty. 4th is Dave Marcus. 3rd is Dale Earnhardt. 2nd is Terry Labonte, and the leader is Rusty Wallace, and he has now almost an 11-second lead on Labonte. In 11th spot, by the way, is Bill Parsons, and 12th is Tim Richmond, who spun while running in 2nd position. And there is Tim, who's in 12th.
Tim Richmond running on the road course. At least they were racing in this area as early as 1948. They used to run through the streets here in Watkins Glen in 1948, 1952. The day they opened the track here in 1948 was known as the day they stopped trains. October 2nd of 1948 was when they first started racing here. They were running through the city and county streets up and down the hill. There's Kyle Petty holding back right now. Darrell Waltrip, they've been running together for about the last 20 or 25 laps, seeing a lot of each other. Ricky Rudd is following along. We saw some smoke from Ricky's car earlier, but whatever it was, Bud Moran's crew seems to have corrected it.
And Richard Petty comes in for a stop in the SCP Pontiac. Could be a change of tires here. They're going to work on the left side of the car. Windshield is being cleaned off. Some fuel is being put in. Let's go to Jerry.
Well, final pit stop for the SCP Pontiac as they are changing, you said, left side tires. They normally change left side tires mostly on a road course. The outside of the car getting most of the beating. Petty down and away. Good pit stop, about 15.5 seconds.
Petty started the race in 22nd position, having qualified at 114.865 miles an hour.
As we go back up front and look at Rusty Wallace traversing this historic old place, it was 1956 when this permanent course out in the country, so to speak, Watkins Glen was built. We're only about 2 or 3 miles from downtown Watkins Glen, and it was 1957 that Winston Cup cars first came here, believe it or not. In 1957, Buck Baker was the winner. Buck Baker was also the pole setter, and as Jerry told you earlier, the pole setter has won all 3 times that they have had NASCAR qualifying here at Watkins Glen.
And now Rusty Wallace passes Rick Knoop as Rusty is on his way to victory here at Watkins Glen in the Budweiser. Continuing to stretch out the advantage on Terry Labonte. The lead is up to almost 11.5 seconds at this point. So it is a definite pulling away situation for Rusty Wallace. And there is the battle for 5th. It involves Kyle Petty in car number 21 and Darrell Waltrip in the number 17 Tide machine. Well, Darrell Waltrip has been spending some lonely evenings when he's on the road at a Winston Cup race, and we had a chance to talk to him about the reason why.
One member of your team, and more importantly of your family, has been missing for a few weeks, and I know it's been tough for you to be on the road because you've never really been without her for a while.
No, I haven't, and our anniversary is next weekend, and that'll be 18 years, and I had never been to a race without my wife. A Winston Cup race. I've been to a lot of little races without her, but I've never been to a major race without her. And it's kind of funny. I think the Lord has a really funny sense of humor. I've been going to races all my life with her, and then all of a sudden she wasn't there, and I kind of had to adjust to going alone and spending evenings in a hotel room watching television by myself and eating by myself. And about the time I sort of adjusted to that and gotten used to that, now the Lord's going to bring her back along with a little girl, looks like, and my life will be changed again. So it's sort of the calm before the storm, I think, is what people tell me anyway. But I tell you, I look forward to it. I can't wait to say, here, Jerry, you hold the baby a minute while I do the interview, will you?
And Darrell's season has certainly turned around since the addition of Jeff Hammond to that team. Riverside, the first race that Jeff joined, but he's 17th there. But then a 7th at Michigan, a 4th at Daytona, a 19th at Pocono, and a 4th in the Talladega 500 most recently. And Darrell today running a very strong race.
They seem to be frozen on the springboard before Jeff came on board, and now they're only about a tick behind because they're hitting 4th and 5th with consistency, not challenging for the lead yet, but they are closer without a question than they've been all year long.
And there is the leader, Rusty Wallace. Boy, he is just looking so fine, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is, Bob. They've had a very gratifying day, and it would truly be a heartbreaker if he would not go on to victory from here. And Jerry Punch can tune us in perhaps a little closer to the situation on Rusty Wallace.
Well, it's fingernail biting time in the Wallace pit, and crew chief Barry Dawson here communicating with the driver, trying to determine whether they can make it all the way. Let's find out what they've said. Barry, you said you could go 36 laps under green. On your final pit stop on lap 53, you'd have to go 37 to make it to the checkered flag. Can you go all the way?
We're very close. The car had a push in it before, which eats up fuel, and we changed the tire stacker to try to eliminate that. We're very close. With a single file restart, we felt like we did the right thing by staying out. We're running hard now in case we have a problem. We'll try to have enough of margin to jump in here, but we should be okay. We're very close.
Well, they're very close. We might mention that Terry Labonte's crew, Tim Bruce, says they can go all the way. One driver that can go all the way is Dale Earnhardt. He pitted on lap 46 a little early, so they will have to come back in and make a final fuel stop.
Well, this race is certainly not over yet, although Rusty Wallace is making a shambles of it right now, pulling out to about a 12-second lead on Labonte. The question is fuel. Will he have to stop in the closing laps of this race? Will Labonte have to? Or will perhaps the win go to the individual who is running in third position at this moment, Dale Earnhardt, and he will undoubtedly not have to make another stop for fuel. So it's not over yet. Stay with us. We got exactly 10 more laps to go as 80 has been completed with Rusty Wallace lengthen his lead over Terry Labonte. Rusty has had 9 top 10 finishes in 1987 Winston Cup competition, including a second at Martinsville. The season started off disastrous for him as he finished in 41st position at the Daytona 500, but has had a very good season aside from that and is 9th in the point standings. So Rusty Wallace could add to those points and register his third Winston Cup win this afternoon if things continue to go smoothly. In Benny Parsons' car, we continue to watch his progress, and Benny is in 8th at the moment.
And a spin right in front of Benny to his left, off the left-hand side. It looks like Rusty Wallace.
No.
I couldn't tell. It was the very quick clips. It was a 20-something Kyle Petty.
Kyle Petty and not the leader, Rusty Wallace.
It was 20-something, and it looked like a 7, but Kyle Petty running competitively in the top 10.
No yellow as Kyle continues to motor, and there is the spin involving Kyle.
As Benny Parsons goes underneath, Morgan Shepherd motors by without incident underneath, and Kyle Petty puts her back in gear and tries to pick up where he left off. However, he is now about 3 or 4 positions behind where he was earlier.
Well, of course, he had been battling for the last several laps with Darrell Waltrip. Now he's positioned behind Bobby Allen. He was running in 5th when the spin occurred. Tough break for Kyle Petty.
The winner of today's race will join Buck Baker from 1957, Billy Wade from 1964, Marvin Panch from 1965, talking about the Wood brothers, Marvin Panch and Kyle Petty on your screen right now, and of course Tim Richmond. Some interesting names have finished in the top 5 here in a Winston Cup NASCAR race at the Glen as we go back up front and look at Rusty Wallace, who is running very comfortably. Frankie Schneider, Eastern Modified fans will recognize that name. He was 4th in 1957. Road racer Walt Hanskin was 3rd. He's had a couple of Indianapolis 500 starts.
We take a look once again from inside Benny's car. The top of the left side of the screen, you can see Kyle sideways.
Kyle Petty in the midst of a group of cars. You see just off the left-hand side of the front windshield of Benny, and Benny calmly steering to the right-hand side, the
Dale
left side of the
Earnhardt.
road.
Earnhardt is pitting. He was one of those that we said would not have to make another stop for fuel, but here he is.
Well, Jerry had him stopping about 6 laps earlier, and we did. Dick Bergman is there.
And this is exactly what they said they were going to do. I had just talked to Richard Childress 3 laps earlier. He said they had no chance that they could make it whatsoever. I'm also right now with Tim Brewer. He is the crew chief for Terry Labonte. Tim, can you make it all the way without pitting, or you're going to have to do what Earnhardt just did?
If I knew that, I wouldn't be sitting here worried. It's going to be close. Ronnie Dawsey's figured the mileage 2 or 3 times. Upon the fuel estimation we've got, we don't know, but it's going to be close.
Are you going to stay out there, let him run out if that's the game plan?
It looks like we're going to have to do that.
Boy, it is nail-biting time at Terry Labonte's pit for sure. This fuel thing has boiled down to the story of the race.
Boy, it sure has. While we're seeing Rusty pull away from the field, this thing is far from over. The question is, if Rusty does come in, does he have enough of a lead to maintain the advantage? Or will Labonte and everybody else have to come in, or will Earnhardt win? It's far from over with 6 laps to go.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, Earnhardt only has a chance now, obviously, if both Terry and Rusty stop. But this is really a gambler's hand. Everybody has been dealt their cards, and right now they're all peering over the top of them. The money is stacked on the table, and it's time for the guy on the left to say, well, I pass, or I'll take 3 cards. Nobody knows what everybody else is holding, and nobody knows what moves, at least at this point, people around the table are going to make.
Well, from the conversation that we have picked up between Rusty and Barry Dodson, Barry has told him to run hard and keep your eye on the light. And so that's what Rusty is doing at the moment, watching for the fuel light to come on, but in the meantime, running as hard as possible, trying to gain as much advantage as he possibly can before a pit stop.
Dale Earnhardt, incidentally, has dropped to 10th. A rundown very briefly here, just as a reminder of the 7 winners of Winston Cup races in 1987. Earnhardt, of course, the leader with 8. Rusty Wallace's best finish has been a 2nd. Not among the winners yet. Bill Elliott has won twice at Daytona and Talladega. Ricky Rudd at Atlanta. Davey Allison twice, Talladega and Dover. Kyle Petty, the 1 win at Charlotte. Jim Richmond has won at Pocono and Riverside, 2 of his very favorite tracks. And Bobby Allison, the winner the 4th of July weekend at Daytona. 5 to go.
Right behind Rusty Wallace is Bill Elliott, who has not had a very successful day at all. He was in the pits very early in the race and has been struggling to gain a respectable finishing position all afternoon long. Bill Elliott in car number 9. He'll certainly be, though, one of the favorites when next Sunday we are at Michigan International Raceway for a Winston Cup race there. And here is Kyle Petty, who is coming into the pits. Now, Kyle fell from 5th to 12th when he spun. He's coming in for a final splash of fuel. That was a quick one, and there he goes.
Interesting, Bob. Kyle was one of a raft of cars that hit it on lap number 53, and that included many of the leaders, including Rusty Wallace, I believe. Yes, Rusty was one who came in on lap 53, as did Labonte. So at least one of those cars, including our 2 leaders who stopped on lap 53, has had to come in.
4 laps to go. Less than 4 now, as Rusty is in turn number 1. They have about a 20-second lead. So conceivably, they could come in and get a drink of fuel and get back out on the racetrack and still maintain first.
It almost seems like a good risk, because remember, this is a flat course where you're going downhill coming out on number 1, but it doesn't do any good because you go uphill coming out of it. You can't coast all the way around. It seems like it would be their best maneuver at this point to duck in for about 5 or 6 seconds, take a couple of gallons of fuel, and fire out.
I'll tell you, this is going to come down to it. It's been a great race on a rain delay from yesterday here on a Monday late morning, early afternoon. The sky still very cloudy in some parts, but the sun is shining about 2 miles from here as we look beyond turn number 1, but clouds still hanging over this race course at the moment. But we are going to complete it. Now there is less than 4 laps to go. Rusty Wallace in the Kodiak Pontiac crosses the line, and now there are only 3 more circuits left.
Number 7 on the money winnings list for 1987, the winner of over $304,000, Rusty Wallace, is trying to add significantly onto that. He is currently ranked 9th in the point standings. He has finished in the top 10 times. He has finished in the top single position not once this year.
And there is Darrell Waltrip's Tide crew, led by Jeff Hammond, getting set for a possible stop by Darrell. They're watching for him.
Interesting, we were talking about people stopping on lap 53 like Wallace did. Kyle Petty, he had to pit. Waltrip pitted lap 53. Another one.
Well, we're just going to have to keep our eye on Rusty and see what happens with that car. See what he does. He's in the 88th lap of this race. When he crosses the stripe, he will complete lap 88.
At this point, Wallace's crew also needs to keep close tabs on what Tim Brewer and Terry Labonte do, because if they come in, it's automatic. You need to come in. If they stay out, then you don't know what to do. But keeping close tabs on what Labonte and Brewer do is also essential at this point.
2 laps to go. Wallace in the lead. Out of turn number 1, he's got Bill Elliott right behind him, but Elliott is not on the lead lap.
And Elliott has been close enough to Rusty for a long enough time, and Rusty has been so much better than Bill today. I think it's pretty obvious that Rusty has backed off just a touch. They were trying to lengthen that lead a few laps ago, as you heard from Barry Dodson. Now, I think they have opted for some stability and not burn up just an added little centimeter of fuel.
Let's go to Jerry for this Waltrip stop.
They may have stretched it one lap too far as Darrell Waltrip coasts the Tide Chevrolet in, out of fuel. They're now pushing the car, trying to get it refired. They have splashed fuel back in it. Darrell Waltrip working the clutch, trying to get the car geared. And Rusty Wallace is out of fuel also. He is coming to pit road. Wallace's crew waiting for the Kodiak Pontiac. Rusty has just radioed in and told him he is out of fuel.
Elliott is off course, meanwhile, gets back on quickly. Rusty will make a stop here on the last lap of the race. Here he comes in. The red light, the fuel light is on, indicating the car is just almost out of fuel. Coming in quickly. He's got a 20-second lead. White flag is out.
Labonte has not come past the start line yet. Still looking for Terry Labonte.
The fuel in, and Rusty is back out on the racetrack as we have a car. Harry Gant has blown an engine. A lot of smoke from that car in turn number 1. That's you can see it right there. Harry moved to the inside. Here is Rusty Wallace, and he has maintained the lead.
He has. Labonte just crossed the finish line as Rusty was exiting the pit, so Rusty has held on to the lead.
Can he hold off the last half lap? Labonte, there he is in car number 11, running in second spot. He's now close to, well, there is Wallace. You can see Harry Gant to the inside of the racetrack on the left side of your screen with a lot of smoke pouring from that engine. But Rusty Wallace, it appears, has successfully made a pit stop on the last lap for just a splash of fuel, got back out and maintained the lead, and is going to win his 3rd Winston Cup event of his career.
You know, I'm going to be very interested to hear from particularly Jerry Punch, who has seen so many of these Winston Cup races. Does he ever remember a winner stopping as he took the white flag going on to win the race?
It doesn't happen often. There is the Kodiak crew as they watch for their driver, Rusty Wallace, to move through the final corners of this race. Here he is off of corner number 7, and Rusty Wallace has won the Budweiser at the Glen. Ooh. What a tremendous race we had here today. It was worth waiting an extra day for.
It really was. Absolutely astounding, repeating again. If anyone out there can remember on a super speedway, look at Jeff Bodine shredding the left rear.
Yeah, it's completely gone. Meanwhile,
Bobby Hillin has returned to the speedway.
Look at that car.
With significant repairs. There's Bodine going by, Kyle Petty. There's Rusty getting congratulations of Davey again. If anybody can remember winning, stopping on the white flag lap, I'd like to hear about that. Rusty Wallace, we're looking right now at Barry Dodson, some tears coming from his eyes. How about yours?
Perfectly calculated. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for being on board. Great victory. Thank you.
Okay, Rusty, we were just commenting up here. I don't ever remember anybody stopping on the white flag lap of a race and going on to victory. You're right. The crew hit it just right. You were also watching the red light, weren't you?
Thanks a lot, Larry. I tell you, I'm just really happy for the crew. They did such a great job. This preparedness was right on the money. Thanks a lot for Kodiak, my sponsors. Hung with us. Thank you. We needed this one, guys.
Okay, Rusty, thanks for letting us ride with you. We'll see you in Victory Lane, and now down to Jerry Punch.
Be there, buddy. I'll be there.
Well, Barry Dodson, you guys wouldn't be denied this year. Last year you said it got away, but this year you wouldn't let it. Tremendous pit stop, that last stop.
Can't believe it, Jerry. We all said our prayers, and we knew we were going to be close, and I said, what the heck, run as hard as you can. Let's get all the lead we can, and we knew it was going to be close. We got a light in the car, and we tuned the thing. We worked on it a little bit Friday, and tried to get it where we thought if it came on, we'd be dead on it, and it paid off. And we're just tickled to death. I want to say hello to my kids at home and everybody at home. The crew at the shop's working today because it's Monday. And tell Billy Bones he should have been here.
Well, the first ever win for the Kodiak crew on a road course and the first win for Rusty Wallace. They earned it. They wanted it. They needed it. And they got it here at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, they came here and tested a couple of times and really prepared for this race, and it paid off. He didn't start from the pole position. He started from second. But, boy, when the green flag dropped, it was Rusty Wallace pretty much in control of this race. Labonte was second. Dave Marcus is strong and a very fine third finishing position. Ricky Rudd was fourth, and Benny Parsons came back for a fifth. Then 6 through 10, Alan Kulwicki, Phil Parsons, Dale Earnhardt, Bobby Allison, and Tim Richmond, who moved back up to 10th after spinning in the late stages while running second. Back after but Cup race is over. It was a great race, and it was won by Rusty Wallace. And let's go to Dick Berggren.
And it's a very happy, emotional Rusty Wallace down here in Victory Lane. Did you know just how close you really were to running out of fuel at the end?
I tell you what, I knew it was close when I asked the crew how many laps we got left to go. I mean, how long we could go on fuel, and they wouldn't tell me.
What did you think then about staying out, and when they told you to keep standing on the gas? Did you think you should have been conservative?
Well, I kept asking them, I said, guys, you want me to slow down because we had such a big lead? And Barry said, heck no, run hard. We got to let's get a big lead. If we got a pit, we got enough time, we can still get them. We come down pit road, hit the gas. She ran out of gas, and I was trying to leave pit road and finally lit back up. And, boy, when I come out and I didn't see anybody behind me yet, I knew I was lucky, I'll tell you.
What were you thinking, though, when you saw that red light come on and you knew you had to come in and you knew you were this close to victory?
Oh, no. This thing's supposed to work, you know, if you're out of fuel, but I didn't want it. Hey, buddy. Give me a kiss.
That's Raymond Beadle, his car rotor. Go ahead.
Oh, I tell you, it's wonderful. Raymond's never seen us win, and I'm real proud to have him here and watch what happened. This Kodiak Pontiac performed just perfect. You know, Barry Dotson, Jimmy Makehart, and Harold Lilley, they did an outstanding job, and they're to be commended. I love them for it, I tell you.
It is a team sport, is it not?
Oh, man, these guys, they got it. They're number one in my book.
How important was the testing that you did in preparation for this car? You did seem to be so superior all day long for the race.
Everything was very important when it came to testing. Terry Labonte tested, we tested, and I think it showed in qualifying. Terry and I were on the front row, and he played a game with me all week long in practice. You know, he'd run with me a little bit, then he wouldn't run, and you know, we'd have these fictitious times and stuff going, but it didn't bother me. You know, we knew we had it, and if we could hold on and not have a problem. I just can't say enough about my crew, though. Those guys did it. They really did. I just aim it.
Well, there's one other statistic we just had revealed, and that is that 2 out of your 3 Winston Cup wins have come on ESPN.
I must be lucky. I tell you, maybe I'll start carrying the camera for you and maybe get another one.
Well, we've got a broadcast next week at Bristol. How do you expect to run there?
Won Bristol last time. Maybe I can do it again. Let's see.
Let's make it Michigan. Michigan's next week. Bristol's the week after. Rusty Wallace in Victory Lane. Very, very happy.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to say hi to my kids, Patty, Greg, and Katie, and everybody back home. See you back there later.
It'll be a happy reunion, you can be assured of that.
Rusty Wallace wins the Budweiser at the Glen in an exciting finish, stopping on the last lap for fuel, but having enough lead build up that he maintained it and won by 11 seconds over Terry Labonte. And Rusty averaged just a little bit over 90.5 miles an hour in this 2-hour and 24-minute race. Labonte was second. Finishing in third position was Dave Marcus. Back with more right after this.